What's up, ladies and jerks? Welcome to the first episode of my new show, except it's not actually about me. On today's episode, we will be having a conversation with Dan McDonald, aka the Evil Genius, aka Dizzle McDiz. Dan McD is one of the most creative people I know. He's a husband, a father, a painter, an illustrator, a graphic designer, a screen printer, a mixed media digital artist. And every once in a while, he dabbles in everything from sculpting, music, production, and he's currently actively producing biomass bricks. His oldest son, Ian, is the drummer of the Spooky Basements, who I believe may be recording under a new name, Dirt Girl. And Dan is my go-to guy, has been pretty much since middle school. He's the one I turn to whenever I have a big idea and whenever things are going south. He's pretty much my best friend. So let's dive into it. Oh, and by the way, the audio on this recording gets corrupted a couple of times, once starting around the 45-minute mark and at least 2 more times after, and it sounds like we were visited by aliens. If you have the patience to sit through, it corrects itself. And as this is the first episode, I promise I'll work harder on figuring out all the bugs. So let's dive into this conversation with Dan McDonald.
Yo.
Here it is.
I'll try to sound really excited.
You don't have to try to do anything.
I'm yawning. Is your voice... You're further away. Is yours picking up okay? Because I'm probably louder than you.
It just depends on who laughs or... Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm closer.
Who's laughing?
So, I thought that we would start with sirens.
That's right, because we're in Detroit.
We're in Detroit.
By the Detroit Zoo. So we must be in Detroit.
We're so close to Detroit.
That we're by the zoo.
Of course there's sirens right now.
Well,
Press record.
that's the life you live in Detroit.
It is.
It's non-stop.
It's a rough life. Just
You have maggots all over.
Yep, they're coming.
The garbage can.
They're coming for the maggots. So I wanted to talk to you about, to start with, let's go back towards the beginning of when you and I met.
Okay.
And what do you remember? Or...
Man, see, now that I'm old, these things are getting foggier.
Yep.
Man.
Because I was thinking, like, of course, there was, Mr. Taylor's class.
Right.
And some people already know about the Bake Me a Cake Jim Baker thing, and that's definitely one way that we met. And that was sort of by force.
Right.
Because we were assigned to interact with each other.
But then again, there were people that didn't want to read my song. I don't know I can't remember if that was completely forced. Because I remember people were kind of like, yeah. And then I was like, and they were like, no.
And so that's what I'm saying. We were probably the two that hadn't, the two left, and we were like, oh, I guess I have to work with you on this.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean by forced.
Yeah.
But then I think about that period of time. That was what, 8th grade?
Well, we had another class, too.
Mm-hmm.
In that class, we would play the Lynx and read Akira. Because, it was a school. So we had to do those things in that class.
Right.
And I don't know whose class that was. I mean, that's,
It was probably
unfortunate.
English.
Yeah, I mean, right. It ain't real clear in my brain. Mm-hmm. It was probably English. Yeah. Honestly, the funny thing is I don't remember, like, the only thing I remember about the classes is, like, what was going on that wasn't being taught,
Yeah.
So, there was a class where we would read Akira comics and play the Atari Lynx in class. Like this,
Did that link,
I think...
or did we share it?
No, you were the only one that had one. Well, Jamie had one, I think.
Right.
But I didn't have one. I was playing yours.
Okay.
Like, you would be like, here. And I was like, whoa. And then you were like, I was like, let me see your Akira comic. Yeah. That's it.
And then, I guess, I'm just trying to remember, like, the thought that stands out, and I don't know how accurate it is, but this is my perception, is you and I and the other people we associated with at that time, it was a small group of people, and I don't feel like we wanted to be friends necessarily. It was more like that was the only room left at the available space in the lunchroom.
Okay, so at the lunch table.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so you have this, there was like multiple lunches.
Yes.
And throughout the years, and we would, no matter what one you had, there would be a lunchroom full of kids, and everyone had these cliques and groups of friends.
Right. That was a big deal back then. There was huge...
Yeah.
But we weren't from that city. Should we say that? Like,
yeah, none of us were.
Yes.
I don't think.
But
they all were.
Everybody had been, like, born and raised, and everybody's...
They grew up there.
They grew up and never left. And like
some are still there.
And they're still there. Yes, it was very, like, Children of the Corn.
And it was a lot, I think, had to do with sports.
There was lots of sportsing going on. And the helmet touch was a big deal.
A lot of helmet touch.
A lot of helmets touching.
And so...
Well, I played football, right? Do you know that?
I mean...
I didn't play a full season.
No.
It's interesting how that happened.
Okay.
Because when I first, was new to the area, I would play football like many kids in the city. Like, you would play with your friends, and it was fun. It was actually really fun. Of course, there's no, you didn't wear equipment or anything. But, and I was really good at it. I was fast, and it was fun. And my dad's like, why don't you play football? And I was like, I don't know. I don't really know how well that's going to work out in the real thing. But he's like, well, just try it. And if you like it, you can play. And if you don't, you can quit or whatever. I'm like, yeah. And I'm not like a quitting type person, but I played the football and it was horrible. And not because I don't I like having friends and playing sports, but it sucked. Like, the people, the nepotism, the coaches, and the whole, what was good for kids was the last thing on their minds. The last thing. It was all who knew whose parents for years got to do this, and it didn't matter if I was faster, stronger, smarter. I'm not saying I was smarter than and faster and stronger than all these people. I was. But honestly though, I was just as good. I was physically fine. And they wouldn't let me do anything. Like, nothing. Like, so I basically had to do all the training and could never actually play.
The game?
The game.
Okay.
So it's like,
So you were on the bench when you were supposed to be having...
the
good part.
Yeah, right. Like, I could never even play.
And it was...
So all I had to do was, like, go, like, early in the morning and, like, what's the point in practicing and all this, like, if you can't actually...
Right.
They wouldn't even let me do anything.
And that was because...
They didn't know me.
You weren't chummy, like, or your family wasn't.
My family wasn't friends with. Yeah, it was all this like crazy. And then not only that, the people that were there were. I don't want to diss people because I don't want if people hear this. I don't know. Like I don't want like people.
Right. Like
well, I don't associate.
World.
Yeah, like the whole world. But like there were players that were just. I mean, obviously, like they're racist. You know, they were like ignorant. They were mean. I mean, these people were like it was like the stereotypical bullies, you know, like you see in movies. Like that was what they aspired to be. Like they were, like they would tease people and like pick on weaker people and like physically like smash people, you know, and like none of it had anything to do with football. Like they would dress up like cheerleaders like every week. Like they had this, Well, there was it was like part of like the what do you call it? Like pep rail or like spirit week. Everything revolved around football. You know what I mean? Like
the whole year.
Everything was about football.
Yeah.
And it was like, they're like this is really fun. The football players get to dress up like cheerleaders, and I was like, no.
That sounds horrible.
I'm like, I'm not doing that. And they're like, right. Why not? I'm like, because that's not what I'm doing. Like, I don't think that's going to help.
Right.
Like, at all.
It's not going to help my game.
It's like, I just wanted to, I don't know, my dad made me sign up, you know, basically. Like, I'm just checking it out.
So then you just quit at some point, or?
Yeah, I quit. After, like, I realized what was going on. I was like,
Did you tell anyone? Or did you just stop showing up?
I quit and I just turned in my equipment. I was like, whatever, you know. And the only person I ever talked to from the team was somebody who also was like trying out like me, who wasn't normally, and they wouldn't let him do anything either. And like, so we often ended up talking to each other and we're like, dude, this sucks. You know, like both like, we're like, yeah. I'm like, this is obvious, right? Like they would not let us ever do anything, you know? And in hindsight, it's fine, because then I started skateboarding. Because I was like, well, I'll just do my own, like, this is a much better sport, where it's fun and, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm wondering, like, I don't remember, so, when you started skateboarding,
well, I started...
Were you friends yet?
I had... excuse me. When I started skateboarding was kind of like a miracle thing happened, because I didn't really skateboard before I moved to Heartland, because I was just young. I was like 10 years old or 11. You know, you knew what a skateboard was, but we were riding BMX bikes then. And then when I moved to Heartland, there was nowhere to skateboard anyway, really. Right. It was there was no pavement. But at my neighbor's house, we were doing something in the yard, and something was sticking like out of the ground, and we dug it up, and it was like a 1970s like skateboard. It was like old. That so we cleaned it all up, cleaned up all the bearings, and then we rode that, and I was still really young. So me and my brother rode it, me and the neighbor rode it. I mean, we would do the thing where we would like, if we went to my Uncle Larry's who had pavement, like someone would ride the bicycle and you would pull the person with a rope or something like behind the bicycle.
Yeah.
We built like a thing in the barn, because there's barns around, but there's no, so the barn had like some concrete, because, you know, there's animals and stuff in there.
Yeah.
So we were skateboarding in a barn, like with barn animals, you know, but it was fun. Like you would use plywood, you know what I mean? Like, but that's where I actually learned to like skateboard, like not like what was known then as like street skateboarding, not like the modern.
Right.
Well, actually, back then the boards didn't even have like the nose up anyway. Like even the big ones, like they were still
flat.
Yeah, they were still for the most part flat with the tail.
Or sometimes they were like some kind of plastic rubber where like the middle would bend.
Yeah. Well, that's how the 70s ones were. They were kind of skinny, and then they had the really wide wheels, you know.
Yeah.
But it was fun.
So what about, speaking of skateboarding, and living somewhere before Heartland, it makes me think about Jonathan Harris.
John Harris lived in the same city as me.
Right.
That's right.
You introduced me to him.
That's right. John Harris was my friend before he was anybody's friend from Heartland.
Right.
That's right. We basically like kidnapped him and took him. But so John, I can't remember exactly where he lived.
White Lake or
Oh, it's Union Lake.
Oh,
Union Lake.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think he was around. He was around my grandma's house, that area. Mm-hmm. Well, what? So maybe he wasn't. Well, wait. I think he was Union Lake, but he might have been. Boy, it was a long time ago. I can't remember exactly, but it was that area. Yeah, it was that area, Union Lake area.
So there was...
And so I skated with him in that area first.
Right. I'm just trying to think, because it seems like...
But at that time, I wasn't living there, but I had been going back and, like, because I still had, my grandma still lived there. So I would still go back and forth. But I was older. Right. And then I was like, we should come, hang out with my friends,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems like there was this period of 1 minute, maybe it just had to do with whether or not we were in school or not.
Yeah.
But it seemed like, when I think back to that time, we were either face down at a piece of paper drawing something or painting something.
Yeah.
Or we were skateboarding.
Right.
Which probably just had to do with seasonality and whether it was summer vacation or not.
Yeah, I mean, well, if we were painting, we were probably in school.
Right.
Because, I mean, I would draw and stuff, but I only mostly use a ballpoint pen.
Right.
Because I was poor.
So when did you start that? Because I feel like a lot of things happened, like, I don't know if it's coincidentally or at the same time for you and I. But it felt like the way I remember it. It almost seemed like we both realized things at the same time and maybe just like turned over and was like maybe I turned to you and like moments later after you did it first and we're both just like, yeah, drawing with a ballpoint pen is the best thing in the world.
Right.
And because it forces you to not make a mistake.
Right.
What you do is permanent.
Yeah, I only drew with the pen. I didn't even draw in pencil first, which is, I never really thought, you
probably did it first, and I probably thought that's a great idea. I'm going to do my own version of it.
I just drew with ballpoint pen because that was what I would have around.
Paper was easily accessible.
Yeah.
In ballpoint
I mean, honestly, before that, it was probably crayons,
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, I remember basic, all through school, but not before I moved to Heartland, I would draw. Mm. And actually, in the school, I'm trying to think what school it was. Maybe it was, I could have been in Heartland. There was a time where I would draw a comic every week, and then I would sell it every week to the highest bidder in class. Which is really interesting because this is before computers, so there was only one copy of every comic. Which is, if you think about it, it's like tragic and like horrible that I sold like a master, I drew an entire comic book.
Yeah.
And then sold it for like $1.85 or something because someone...
And maybe not
to kids that shouldn't even, it was their lunch money,
And maybe not to the same person.
No, it wasn't the same person every time. No. No, and it was a really cool...
No one knew the whole story.
And I don't even remember it. And it was an ongoing story, and it was really cool. Yeah. And the thing was, it got cooler and cooler, and kids were all into it. And they would read it, but only one person could buy the comic book. And it had a really cool, like, surprise ending where this one robot gets killed. I think it's like this robot snake, but then this other robot comes out of him like he was inside. So, like, basically, there's a robot, and when he gets killed, you realize there's a smaller robot inside him the entire time, controlling him. Something like that. But I'll never know because I sold the only, version.
Do you remember what it was called?
No.
That's interesting.
Yeah, but they got the thing was cool. I remember they got better. Like anything you do.
Yeah. Like
they got better and better the more I did.
Right.
I don't have time to do that now. Like draw whole comics, It's hard.
Yeah.
But of course, like the cool thing about being young is like you just do shit like when it occurs to you.
Right.
With no consideration of actually really how good it is. Like, that's what's cool. You don't care.
Right.
Like, you're just like, I'm going to do this. And there's something really neat about that. So, like, obviously at the age I was, the comic book isn't like some kind of Marvel comic quality. It was far from it. I mean, I had my own style, but like still, like people wanted to buy it. You know what I mean? Like with all the money they had for how old like 10-year-olds are. Right. 11-year-olds are. Yeah. And it was no less like exciting than a normal comic. It was fun. It was fun too because it started out like with a few people interested, and then it draws interest, and then from the other kids like, what are you guys like reading? And then every week there was more people interested in it. It was kind of neat,
So would they share it?
Yeah, like everyone would everyone would gather around like, what?
But one person would be...
Only one person could buy it.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny. And they probably are like, they probably work for like Marvel or DC now, and it's probably been redone. Yeah. And I'm not aware of it, Yeah. If there's ever a comic where the robot gets like murdered and he's fighting like this snake python robot, but then a smaller robot comes out from inside. Yeah. And the cool thing was the robot inside didn't have any like specific features. He was just built out of geometric shapes. Like he was like a nanobot. Because it's probably easier to draw than put like too many details on them. Yeah. But
you could probably do that even more efficiently than ever now with the way people are consuming comic books with iPads and stuff. Like, I haven't actually experienced it, but the people that do seem to like it. Yeah. So you could make one comic. Right. And just push it out, and everyone would just have their own version of it.
Well, see, now there's so many talented people. I mean, I'm not saying that mine wouldn't be good, but there's so much good, like really, like the quality level is really high. Yeah. Because there's all these modern techniques and you can digitally, color it and all this and that. Mm-hmm. It's not like before where you had to draw, and if you screwed up, that was it, It was just one, But yeah, I've already read a lot of comics on the iPad.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
A lot. Uh-huh. It's awesome.
Okay.
Yeah.
I should catch up.
Well, and what's cool and not cool at the same time is there's so many that you can like wade through tons. Yeah. And be like, well, this is okay. But, and the thing is like, you're kind of trying to find something that seems like maybe instantly appealing, but some of the really good ones aren't like that. They're like, you kind of have to go back and look at them again. So like, you don't always know. Like, and then you feel like you're missing out, like, on some, because you're like, oh man, like, if I only went through this many and I found this many that were good, there's thousands and thousands of others, Yeah. That like, what don't I know about, Right. Like, I wish I just knew. It's hard to know. Because the only way to know is to read them all, to find out,
Well, I miss that experience of going to the comic book store or a convention and discovering something.
The comic book conventions were awesome.
Yeah.
I really liked the comic book conventions.
And I feel like that's an entire experience. I'm not trying to be a crotchety old man, but like, I feel like that's an experience that is just lost in the digital world that we live in, where, like, there was something about, and it's similar, this, you know, I relate this to picking out a movie to watch too, like the whole, like, there was something like a ritual about, like, going to the video store or going to a bookstore or going to the comic book store.
Well, because it was always a good time.
It was fun.
It was always fun, like, because you were usually going...
You were usually not going alone, right?
Right, you were usually with friends or somebody, you know, a couple people, and, you know, you looked at all the movies and joked around, and you'd run into people you knew. Mm. People you knew often worked there, even, you know?
Right.
Like, would give you movie posters.
Yeah.
Like, you'd get stuff. Yeah, that's...
And then once you finally found something that you identified with, it was like a drug or something where you're like, now I have to go back to get the next one, or else, because that's the only way I'm going to find out.
Right. Yeah, that's gone. Yeah, the comic book store was I really like comic book stores because they were all a little different. Yeah. So you could go to one and it wouldn't be like another one. There was a comic book store. Was I with you? Was it the Red Apple? Was there a Red Apple?
Where? It sounds...
I don't know. My gosh. Like...
familiar, but...
We used to drive. You would have to drive, you know, like, to all these cities. Okay, so I was at a comic book store, and it was, like, in a basement, and they had this machine that would electrocute dust. And I didn't know what the fuck was going on. Because it made lightning. Like, I'm not even shitting you. Like, this thing. And I'm trying to find out, like, and I'm still pretty young, and I'm like, what is this machine thing? Like, it's kind of over, like, at the counter where you check out. Mm-hmm. And the people that ran this were, like, weird. You know, they're just, like, maybe a husband and wife, but maybe not. Like, just some, you know, it's all independent. Mm-hmm. And this thing, every, like, 5 minutes goes, and then... like, there's this lightning ball, and they're like, yeah, because it's like cleaning the air or something, because, you know, you don't want comic books in a basement, because there's mildew and stuff.
Yeah.
So it was some kind of dehumidifier, and it, like, shot out lightning.
But it was doing it right.
And it was loud, and it was so weird. And then I remember I was at the front counter, and they had a Hellraiser box. Like...
puzzle box?
Hellraiser puzzle box.
Yeah.
Now, it was only made out of, like, construction paper, and I think it was some promotional item, and the lady was like, do you like that? I'm like, yeah, and she's like, you can have it, and she gave me the Hellraiser box, and I thought that was the coolest thing.
Things have never been the same.
Right, and so, like, that's just, right, yes, and then I went home, and, well, when I did the movie with Greg Gosselin, one of the Beatle films, he has that Hellraiser box. Mm. Now, Jamie might have one of them too, because I think either we had the same one or he has one. Mm. He had one too. But it was in the movie I did with Greg Gosselin for psychology class, where he's taking a test and then he keeps getting deeper and deeper into the test, and then suddenly he's got the Hellraiser box. And then he solves it, and then the test gets really weird. The questions after that get more extreme.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, I'd love to see that again.
But I'm going to go get... My throat's a little dry. I'm going to get another drink. Do you want to pause it? Do you want to pause it or not pause it? Just have me yell? I can hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was cool about comic book stores, conventions, like stuff like that. You can't go to Amazon and get like that experience or download that on iPad.
Right.
Like somebody like giving you a Hellraiser. It's like that's with lightning.
Yeah.
I actually have a lot of comic book convention, comic book store lecture stuff, because you would have to drive. And at the time, we were driving to the comic book stores and conventions. when we were old enough to have our so how would we get there? Like before we could drive, we'd have to have Jamie's mom or something take us, right?
Yeah.
But once we had our own vehicles, nobody's vehicles were mechanically sound. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like everyone's car was just barely enough to get you somewhere. Like you could get to school and stuff, but then you'd be like, okay, we're gonna go to Livonia, okay?
Right.
And so it's we'd be driving, and then I was with Steve Rosenberger once in the car, and the tire had a blowout. I mean, it was boom. Yeah. And and then we were on the side of the road, and we only had enough money to buy some comics and some gas, and we're halfway. Yeah. We're in the middle of nowhere. Is your phone beeping?
No, it's very bugging.
Oh, did I not shut it all the way?
That's all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember someone's mom would have to put up with taking us.
That's horrible.
And it's so horrible for them.
Yeah.
Because can you imagine?
There's no joy in it for them.
It's the last thing.
Yeah.
They probably are thinking, why did I have kids? I did not know that I was going to have to be doing this.
Right.
No one sold me this idea.
Yeah.
But then I remember Bob was one of the first people to
have a car,
be old enough to
get his license. Old. He's actually older a little bit. Yeah.
So he got, from what I don't remember Steve Rosenberger driving us anywhere, but I remember Bob being the goat. He was he got the first car that I can remember.
Right.
And it was this, again, a communal thing where we're all poor.
Right.
We all want to get the fuck out of this hillbilly town, and we work together to save money for gas.
Yeah.
Or, I remember going to Ann Arbor with Bob freaking out over
the windows down?
The windows being down because
you wasted gas.
It would create drag.
So it was but so would the AC.
Oh, the AC.
So the problem is it's 100 degrees outside, and we're driving with multiple people in the same car, and all the windows up and no AC, so that we could save 25 cents.
Yeah, I forgot.
It's we almost died.
Yeah,
I was just roll down the windows, Bob. It can't be that bad. No, man, it wastes gas. Well, he would know. He's a truck driver now, so he probably drives everywhere with the windows up.
I don't think he is driving a truck.
Oh, I thought he drove a semi.
He quit.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
I didn't know he quit.
He had a carpet cleaning business that they recently sold, I guess.
Oh.
And now he's, I think, doing maintenance on property near where...
It's probably better because then he can see his kids more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I remember, everything was calculated down to, every little cent.
Yeah, to the penny.
Yeah, it was and there was also some sort of... We weren't skateboarding immediately, but it was soon after. So I think, the discovery of, things like Dave's Comics in Ann Arbor and stuff.
Yeah.
Comics got us to Ann Arbor and other places like Livonia, or I remember there was another comic book store out on M59 towards Union Lake. I don't know if you ever went to it, but it was by where that skate park was.
Man, there was one.
It was really tiny.
There was one, and all I can remember is what it looked like, and this is a place we would go to get the Japanese animation movies recorded on the videotapes. Mm. There was one comic shop that did that, total bootleg. Okay. And I think it was the same weird, one of the guys, because he was at the convention, selling them, and then I think we figured out where his shop was from that.
Oh, yeah.
His, whatever, it was way out there somewhere, and it was so little and weird. But he had Japanese movies. He was the only one.
Yeah. But at some point I know that I originally was into skateboarding was something I was interested in, but logistically didn't make sense in Heartland.
Right.
So
we built the ramp.
Before the ramps happened, I was really into I wanted to do something like that, so I bought a freestyle BMX bike.
Yeah.
And that I wanted to do, but no matter how hard I tried, I was horrible at everything.
It's difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then skateboarding became, for me, it became more realistic once someone got a car. And then I think we all just spontaneously bought new boards and tracks. And next thing you
once we could get to Ann Arbor,
right,
we could skate. We could skate freely all night, everywhere.
All day, all night.
All until the sun came up.
So all we needed was gas.
Yeah.
And then I think we all did this, but we would intentionally save up an extra $1 for food. Yeah. So we would get
burrito or something.
Pinball Pete's had that quarter, the stand, the dispensers with the chips and stuff. Right. You could get a bag of chips for a quarter, and you could get a pop or a soda for a quarter. So we would skate all day and then live off that.
Yes. That's the Pinball Pete's that was upstairs, right?
Yes.
Yeah. That's not there anymore.
That's not there.
I don't think it is. I don't think it's been there for a while.
Right.
Yeah. That was a cool place.
And then Jonathan Harris got into the next thing we know, we're skateboarding everywhere. Half pipes are being built.
Yeah. It was fun.
In barns, in backyards of the country. And we would also make our way up to Flint or Pontiac sometime. We would go to Pontiac. I know we all tried going down to Hart Plaza once in Detroit, but we got booted out so quick that didn't make a habit out of it because it wasn't worthwhile.
Well, really, Ann Arbor was the best, I feel like, because you could just go. There were so many places. I loved it. It was, and also Ann Arbor had other skateboarders.
Right, so they would have other places to tell you to go.
So you could just literally listen for the sound of the wheels and the clickety clacks, at like 1 a.m. And then there was no rivalry of any sort. You know what I mean? There were no egos really. Do you know what I mean? Right. It wasn't like that. It was like, if you saw a skateboarder, it was like a magnet, and you just immediately everyone just stuck together. And it was like, oh, where are you skating? Right. Oh, do you know about this spot? Let's go. And then everyone would go. And then on the way, a couple other skateboarders would hear you. And then they would just naturally come along, and then everyone would be skating around. It was really fun.
And there would be skater betties.
There would be, I guess, but in all honesty,
we weren't there for that.
I was not interested. I'm being serious.
But it was just funny.
I just wanted to skate.
Yeah, but it was just funny that there would be almost like dedicated fans that they weren't even interacting at first.
Yeah, I'm trying to think.
They'd just show up and sit there and watch us every time.
Right. Yeah, I guess so. Some of those people still around that I would know. James married Darla. So Darla are you talking about Darla was one of them?
She was one of them. And I'm sure the other Melissa is
there's a girl.
Sonia was
Sonia. Yes.
You know.
I know
her.
Yeah. Don't say it like that.
I don't know what that means. I don't even know what that means.
Oh, I have a broken rib. That'll make... Oh, it hurts. Oh.
Dan has a broken rib.
Ow.
For anyone who's listening to this,
I can't cough or laugh.
Doesn't understand why it's that painful and funny at the same time.
Ow. Shoot.
Anyway, that's irrelevant. I was not even trying to talk about that. It was a thing that happened that was interesting.
Yeah, so at
what point because it could go in a bunch of different directions at this point. But, like, for you, at some point we decided to start a fake brand.
Yeah, a fake brand, if there's such a thing.
A brand that means nothing, essentially. And from tell me what your perspective is, because mine is simply that I just wanted to create something like Acme from Looney Tunes, but obviously it just couldn't be called Acme.
Right, but it was 4 letters and 2 syllables.
Yes, that's all it needed to be, and it didn't need to mean anything, and we could slap it on everything we did. I
might have to sneeze. Ow!
Jesus.
I can't sneeze.
Want me to tape your ribs up?
Oh my God.
Probably have some duct tape.
Well, so the problem is I'm laughing into this cushion. I think your cat sleeps here. No, I gotta sneeze again. Okay, maybe we should pause it. It might be the first time that someone's been recorded with a broken rib sneezing. In case you wonder how painful it is. It's that painful. Oh my God, dude. That hurts. I'm sorry.
No, I know. I've had it. I'm sorry. I don't want anyone to ever have to feel this.
I just can't sneeze, laugh, cough. I'm doing all 3 at once. Okay, I'm going to go blow my nose. Cool. All right. I have real sneezy stuff. Excuse me. Oh. Do I sound like I'm dying?
A little bit.
Because I'm dying. So I'm falling apart. What time is it? It's what? It's 1 in the morning.
1:01.
Yeah. Okay, you recording again?
I just let it run.
1, 2, 3, go.
1, 2, 3, go.
Go for it. Go for it. Okay, what's the question?
So at some point, we decided to simultaneously, when we weren't skateboarding, we decided there was no internet. Mm-hmm. We also...
Yeah, let's make that clear. There's no such thing as the internet back then.
There was no... It existed, but no one had personal computers yet.
Actually, me and Steve were some of the first people on the internet. We had an external coupler modem with a rotary phone.
Wow.
Yeah, because we had a neighbor who was one of these people that were like... He was really smart, but he was nuts, kind of.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't want to say that if he ever hears this, but... and he was one of these people that was like, oh, one day the end of the world's going to come and AI is going to take over and the Terminators are going to get everybody. Mm-hmm. And so he built us a computer and taught us how to use... It wasn't called the internet yet. He taught us how to use it, and it was like... It was like the movie The Matrix, where all you have is a screen with a cursor, and basically you're just sitting there, and all of a sudden it just goes, hello, and then you've reached one person.
Wow.
But then you freak out and go, whoa! You know what I mean? You're like, holy shit. And the thing was, we were talking to, like, at the time it was for scientists and people in colleges had it.
Right.
But the people that were, other people using it were doing the same thing as us. They were just searching,
right,
like to see who's out there. It was pretty cool, actually.
Almost like a CB radio, or something.
Yeah, kind of like that. It's like there's no graphical interface. There's no mouse at this time.
Right.
It's before Mac even has, I think, their like little Mac. Mm-hmm. We had an Atari computer. You know, it was DOS. I think DOS was the programming, and it was really exciting, honestly, because like we'd be up at like midnight in the basement, like with all this stuff hooked up. The phone goes into you actually set the receiver into this thing,
Yeah, wasn't it like it had like a cup?
Yeah, it's called an external coupler.
Coupler, right? Yeah.
Modem, and then you do it, and then you're just searching. It was so weird. It was kind of surreal. But when you get in contact, I mean, you take it for granted now, just how easy it is to talk to anybody at any time. But back then,
multiple platforms.
So imagine you live in Heartland, or you live in the country. I mean, you've moved to the country. So now, how often do you talk to just random people from around the world? You don't. There's no such thing. It doesn't exist.
Right.
So when this happened, like when you got through to somebody, it was like amazing. Like even one person, you're like, whoa, who are you? Who are you? What's going on? And the excitement is kind of mutual. The other person's like, oh, who's this? I'm Professor so-and-so at whatever. I mean, but they would totally like talk to you, and they're like, somebody else like is on the, thing that's like way out.
Like a messenger, instant messenger?
Kind of, yeah, like an instant messenger.
And so you'd see both.
Now, I'm sure because of its computers, though, I'm sure there's a way to send and receive other forms of data, but you have a DOS interface, so it's like limited. It's not anything like now at all.
Right.
Like
you wouldn't even know where to
children would have no idea. Like it's such, like now if like a random person like just contacted you or something, was like, hey, you might be like, who the fuck is this? It would be like totally like rude, like what do you want, or just ignore or whatever, Yeah.
Block them. Instant block.
Yeah. That was exciting.
But, so, since there was no internet, it's not the only reason, but I personally remember, especially having to do with, like, the whole skateboard community that was sort of, like became introduced with, like, punk rock culture and music and, like, developed a DIY mentality and relating to your frustration with the football team.
Yeah.
And I like to call them Jennies and Todds.
Jennies and Todds.
Just like, it seemed like there was a lot of Jennies and a lot of Todds.
Yeah, there were. Yeah.
And we were not part of that clique, obviously. And,
yeah.
And so we found our little group. We were forced to find each other in this little tiny group of about 10 people, but it wasn't ever even 10 people at one time.
No.
And so when we were in class, we opted to not pay attention and instead drew pictures.
As far as not paying attention, listen. That's really interesting because I'm trying to think, like, I don't know why I thought that what was being taught was not important. You know what I mean? Like,
I do know why, but we'll keep going.
Yeah, because, like, my parents were not on me. I just had to somehow get to school. That's the only requirement I had.
Yeah.
Like, I know that I haven't mentioned anything else going on at this time, but, like, there's definitely things going on in my family where I'm something not even on the radar. Like I'm completely I'm basically self-sufficient. You know what I mean? Like, they don't really know what I'm doing. They don't necessarily, it's not necessarily like they don't care, but their problems are so bad that as long as they see that I wake up and I'm still alive, that's just basically good enough. Like did he go to school somehow? Okay. So I didn't know, like, I actually went through my entire high school 4 years without talking to a counselor one time, not once. Like they had no one at this school knew anything about like how to get somebody like mentally prepared for anything. Like they didn't know. It was crazy. Like I didn't even understand how the rating there. I didn't know how points were something called electives or required. And I thought electives meant you could choose whatever class you wanted, but I didn't think you even had to pass it. Because I thought the required classes were the only classes that were required. See, because of the name. And electives meant, oh, those are for you to choose. But you don't have to pass. So I chose like anatomy, physiology, so I could draw better. With no intention of passing a class. Based on the curriculum of this other stuff they were trying to teach me. And I'm sure they were confused.
Right.
Because I was like, they're like, man, like, you keep coming to class every day, but you're failing. And I'm like, yeah, isn't it great? It's like, what are we dissecting today? Because they're like, you sure like to draw a lot of pictures. I'm like, that's right, because I'm studying anatomy. I'm actually like learning what I want to learn.
Right.
I don't know what you're saying.
Right.
Like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Right. Yeah, that's funny.
So I don't know anything about what the teachers were trying to tell me. It was weird. Yeah, it was, thinking back on it. Now, some teachers were better than others, obviously. Mm-hmm. But, so what were you saying? You were saying you know why.
For me personally, when I stopped paying attention in class was once I realized they just kept teaching us the same things over again and over again and over. Like, they were teaching us in high school things that we learned in middle school, and they were teaching us in middle school things that they already taught us in elementary school. And it just got to a point where I was just like, I'm bored. Like, I already know all this. I'm just bored. You're gonna make us do a color chart again?
Right, the color chart.
Like, you're gonna make us do, everything just seemed to be rehashed.
And of course, looking back, the history classes were all wrong.
Exactly. That too.
Yeah.
And they just kept repeating the same inaccurate information about history over and over, which you just knew, you didn't know for a fact, but your gut told you they were lying.
Right. Right.
And,
they were Republicans. I'm not saying that that's good or bad, because back then there was more subject. But I remember one time they made us watch this video. This is of a debate at the time. Mm-hmm. And there was the Republicans and the Democrats at the time. And they were making us watch this in class. And this Democrat guy, and I remember this clearly, because this is when I had my own feeling of something was right or wrong, but the teacher was saying the opposite thing. Mm-hmm. Because this Democrat guy, whoever was debating, was like talking, and he made this really good point about something. Mm-hmm. The Republican guy came back, and all he said was a smart-ass joke, okay? And everyone laughed, not in the class, but like at the debate you heard these chuckles, and what it was like this, like, like it was some joke that only rich people would get. No, I'm serious.
Yeah.
And the teacher was also laughing. And then I remember saying, why was that funny? Mm-hmm. And the teacher goes, because he doesn't understand. And he was talking about the Democratic guy, he doesn't understand what he's talking about. And I'm like, that's fucked up. Mm-hmm. Like, you think that this guy's awesome because he made a joke. Like, but this other guy made these valid points in all seriousness, and the other guy just said something mean and joke, but that's cool. Like, that's the way it should be. Mm-hmm. And at that, I remember watching that and going, and they were trying to teach us that this guy, like, look how cool this guy is. And I was like, that's not cool. Like, that guy sucks. Like, his joke sucks. I don't like the way he looks. I don't like the way he talks. So, I do remember the moment I gave up on all of school. Do you want to know that story? You probably know it. It was the science class. And I'll tell you.
Yeah,
I'll tell it. It's a good story because it's sad, and it probably happens, I hope it doesn't, but more than it should. So, this was early on in high school. I was in science class, and I actually liked science. Science is something I find interesting. I mean,
Sure.
because it's science, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the idea of science is interesting. The scientific method is interesting. It's super important. It's the only way you get shit done. And at the time, Mr. Bates, is that his name? The science teacher? I liked him. He was normal. Mm-hmm. And I had an A+ in the class. And I had the highest grade in the class. And my other friend, Sean, he also had the highest grade. And we used to actually just compete to see who could get the test done quicker. Because we both knew, we liked it. We knew everything. So one day, I'm doing the test, and this is towards the end of the year. And this is what makes it also extra sad. All throughout the year, the football players, this is no joke, when he wasn't looking, they would go up into his grade book and erase their grades and write in their own grades.
Wow.
Right, wow. I mean, they were basically failing nonstop and didn't know anything and were just writing in their grades. Mm-hmm. And I was like, that's fucking sick. Just whatever. So, one day I do this test. I go up. I'm the first person done with the test. I go up and I hand it in, and he's grading it on the spot, and I get 100%. And the class is silent because people are all still doing their test. And the teacher goes, "You cheater." He says that. He goes, "You cheater." And I go, "What?" And he goes, "You cheat. You're a cheater." And I'm not a cheater, And I'm like, and it's hard because you're a kid still.
Yeah.
And at that point, you don't think, the world is like that. Where if you actually do good, people think you're cheating.
Right.
That's so fucked up. And I'm like, and so, even if all of a sudden I said I wasn't and he believed me, it's already too late. Because, he's calling me a cheater as I'm standing in front of the whole class. And, he's basically telling the whole class I'm a cheater.
Right.
Right? And I'm like, I'm not a cheater. And he goes, "Yes, you are. You cheat." And then I was really upset. And I was like, I need to go to the library. Because I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to be in that room.
Yeah.
Because it was so toxic. And then I went to the library. And I never told, because I didn't even know what to do. I had no experience with that, Mm-hmm. I mean, I had been accused by the principal of stealing library books, which is another crazy thing, which I didn't do. But I had a bunch of books because one of the English teachers, she would get a bunch of books from the library to have her own little library in her class. And I was constantly reading. Mm-hmm. And so they would do random locker sweeps, because that's the Nazi thing to do. And so they didn't find anything like drugs or anything, but they found that I had an abnormal interest in reading. And they're like, "Why do you have all these books?" And I'm like, "I'm reading them." Yeah. They couldn't understand that. So anyway, that's another whole thing. That's a whole other story. Another story where the principal accused me of stealing books, and he interrogated me trying to get me to confess to something I didn't do. And he kept walking around with me, and then he would be like, "So what do you think now?" I'm like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Did you steal those books?" I'm like, "No." I'm like, "What the fuck is this?" So anyway, the science teacher accused me of cheating. I went to the library, and I was upset. And then from that day on, I was like, if you think I'm cheating anyway, who fucking cares? I just, at that moment, I had that, fuck you attitude. I'm not even, I'm not gonna learn your shit now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You think I'm gonna listen to you now?
Right.
And so I was like, fuck you. So at that point, I just stopped.
Wow.
He basically, it could turn into a story where I'm going to jump ahead and say I got a full scholarship into college, just to put that out there so people don't think that education in high school had anything to do with anything. It didn't.
Right.
It had no effect on my life or my higher education or anything. So, but to some kids, that could have fucked them forever because I got an art scholarship, right?
Yeah.
I needed to have certain scores on my SAT or ACT, but it wasn't like I was going for a science. Let's say I had a career in science plan. No, who knows? I could have been a scientist. At that moment, I walked up there. If he would have said, "You know what? I'm so impressed. I bet you would be a really good scientist." I might be a fucking scientist right now. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. But he completely fucking ruined. He basically is responsible he's one of the people, for just ruining the whole experience of school and education. He's one of them.
Right.
Heartland High School was full of just missed opportunities and abuse and just horrible teaching. Like, it just sucked. At the time, you don't even know it because you don't really have anything to compare it to.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Then later in life, you look back and you go, my God, we went to that fucking horrible school.
Yeah.
Like, what a piece of shit, like, institution that was, you know?
Well, let me just add, because
I'm not talking about Mr. Taylor.
Mr. Taylor excluded.
Mr. Taylor's not on the list.
The best teacher.
He was
in
a
the
good
whole
teacher.
world.
That's right.
But related to all this, my frustration of just being told taught the same regurgitated stuff over and over throughout all of those years. It was every school I went to. It wasn't just Heartland. It was all of them. And so being frustrated and open to absorbing information like a sponge, but not being taught anything.
Right.
It's
super frustrating.
And so then you start finding other ways to preoccupy your time.
Yeah.
Like drawing.
Yeah.
And whatever. But I remember like how you were saying you were like just getting books and reading them yourself.
Right.
Those had nothing to do with
nothing.
Like, what you were learning. That was
nothing at all.
What you were interested in on your own free will. And
I was also persecuted for it. Which is insane by the principal, who later became the superintendent.
Right. and my thing was, I think with our, access to at least finding, eventually making our way to Ann Arbor and comic books. And at some point, my whole life, I was fascinated with technology and at some point discover Wired magazine, Yeah,
Wired.
So I started buying Wired every month and reading it religiously. Mm-hmm. And that ended up becoming my education.
Yeah.
So, and I'm realizing like, oh my God, like all this crazy cool shit is about to happen. And it's right around the corner. But we go to school and we don't even have computers in our school.
Right, I was in typing class.
We had
on a typewriter.
Yeah.
On a mechanical typewriter.
And it wasn't until...
About the typewriter, this is interesting. I was an excellent typer on a typewriter. Me and Dave McCall were at the top of the class. Because whenever you have a friend in class, at least you can do competition to see, like for fun.
Yeah.
And we both had A's. I mean, we could type so fast on a typewriter. It was hilarious. Like, it wasn't because we wanted to type. Mm-hmm. We just wanted to see how fast could we actually go. Like, just, it was almost hilarious.
Yeah.
Because, like, Dave McCall, I mean, he was, like, super fast at everything he did. He would walk down the hall super fast.
He would.
You know what I mean? Like, he was super fast. It was hilarious.
Yeah.
I was like, can I type as fast as Dave McCall? Just for the sheer,
Can I type as fast as Dave McCall walked?
Right. And I could type so fast, like, I could type as fast as I could read. Mm-hmm. So I would just set a book down, and as I read it, my fingers would just go, because a typewriter's mechanical. The rows, I'm explaining this for people if they've never seen, like, typewriters, people don't know typewriters. The keys, when you push them, they go like an inch.
Right.
Right? And it's kind of like each row is higher than the rest. So, like, it's also raised. So the problem is I cannot type on a regular computer keyboard at all because I was so good.
Because they're flat.
Yes. I'll literally destroy,
You'll, go to hit a key and your finger just swipes empty air.
Yeah, it's like, it's like you can't do it. Now, what's weird is I have to look at the keyboard.
Right.
I still know how to type. Like, I can sit here in my mind and go, that's the alphabet on a keyboard. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, does not help without a computer to learn on a typewriter. Honestly. Like, it actually screws you up.
Yeah.
You can't just all of a sudden type on it. A keyboard's way different. Way different.
Yeah. Well, relating to this whole thing and the electives and requirements and stuff like that. Yeah. I remember it was our senior year.
Yeah.
That they finally made a required class called Basic, or something like Introduction to Computers, or Basic Introduction to Computers, and it was...
Was that Mr. Monday teaching that class?
I don't remember who taught it.
Yeah.
But it was, and it wasn't even a whole year. It was like one of those half-year classes.
Was that like Microsoft Excel or something like that? Or like spreadsheets?
It was where they taught you what a kilobyte meant.
Right.
And what a megabyte meant.
And what's funny about that is, I remember when that came around, but me and Steve had already programmed our own games.
Yeah. Right.
We had been saving games on cassette tapes.
Exactly.
And like we were on the internet.
Right.
And
that's what I'm saying.
I know.
So
yeah.
I'm like, and I aced this class.
Yeah.
I was like, because I'm like, are you fucking serious? This is a class? Like, this is, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
This is self-taught.
Yeah.
And so that was also just so insulting.
Yeah.
But I also remember the teacher having this passive, attitude about the whole thing. Like
it's not even a big
deal. Don't worry, you're not going to really need to learn, retain any of this. Like, this is just a phase. This is just, they're just making us do this. This is this new thing they're making us do. And once they realize it's just a phase, it's going to go away, like the Atari 2600 did,
Yeah.
And I was just so insulted and offended. The fact that I
have a good story about
become a requirement until senior year.
So listen to this. So I had a class where we had to play the virtual stock market. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so this was home economics class, advanced. And I ended up in there because I was in Mr. Parmenter's shop class, but they had too many kids. Mm. So they sent me over to the only open class, and I looked in the door. They're like, they're like, let us know if you want to do this class. And they were thinking I wouldn't, because back then, everything was still, sexist. So, I mean, not that, that's gone now, but it was really sexist back then. Mm. So shop class was, for boys.
It was blue.
Yeah. And, home ec was, pink.
Right.
And so they walk me over to the home economics class, and I look in, and there's Dave McCall, and he just waves at me and smiles. And he's sitting by himself, And everyone's already in teams. They had already, went into their groups, and Dave was by himself.
Right.
And I was like, what do you do in this class? And they're like, well, right now we're making donuts. And I'm like, I'm in this class. I literally didn't go back to Mr. Palmer. I stayed. Mm-hmm. And it was the best class ever. Because everyone had 6 or 7 people in their groups, and it was just me and Dave McCall. So whenever we made donuts or awesome food, everyone had to share whatever they made with their whole group.
Yeah.
Well, me and Dave, it was just me and Dave. It's 3 donuts for you and 3 for me. It was fucking awesome.
That's lunchtime.
Yeah. Well, one of the assignments was to play the stock market. Now, what you had to do is they taught you, and you know as well as me, a stock market's just like gambling. It's just fucking gambling. Okay? You invest in companies, so how the fuck can you grade that, right? You don't know.
Did you guess good?
They said, go around and look at look at businesses that you think might do well, and then pick which ones are safe bets in this and invest. And me and Dave McCall turned in our assignment, and you know what we said? We invested 100% of all our stocks in the Apple computer. In the Apple.
Yeah.
And they failed us. They said, you idiots, Apple's going out of business. We would have been fucking millionaires.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Billionaires.
We would have been, if we actually invested the virtual amount of money they gave us, if we were actually in charge of somebody's stocks, and they would be millionaire, we would be millionaires right now. We would be millionaires if we had that money, and we would have full on done that. Because me and Dave were fucking literate, computer lit. We knew.
Right.
We're no. We're it's Apple. That's the fucking future. Right. And then nobody understood.
Yeah.
like, they looked at us like we were nuts.
Right.
They're like, Apple? They're like, what the fuck?
Right, and they weren't even judging you like, no, Apple, like, Windows. Like, they weren't even thinking computers at all.
Yeah,
probably.
It was nuts.
They were just so confused. And
I should tell Dave about that, see if he remembers. I'd get a good laugh about it. Yeah, it's like, whoever heard of an iPhone?
Right.
It's like asinine.
All right, so...
This whole interview is us saying that we're smarter than everybody else. And that they all sucked. This is called how
us getting revenge, taking revenge on the world.
We knew everything and you knew nothing. You told us nothing. We just wanted to invest in Apple. You made us type on a typewriter.
So at some point you decide to at least get grades good enough.
No. You talking about going to college?
Well, something had to happen.
You want to know what happened?
Or were you told that... Okay.
I can tell you if you want to hear it. I don't know how much time you want me to talk. But, I mean, there are stories for these things.
We're only a fraction of the stuff that I want to talk about.
Okay. I mean, because do you want me to not tell you? Okay, so this is interesting. So this is about how I ended up going to art school from Heartland. Yeah. Which is a giant leap, just so you know.
Right.
Because art college isn't like... This is Kendall College of Art and Design in Grand Rapids. There's basically two in Michigan. There's Center for Creative Studies in Kendall. Kendall's a private art school, and it's a very, very good college. Mm-hmm. What I liked about it, I'll backtrack, but what I liked about Kendall is it's not... The things that I remember that were the most useful were not art-related at all. Mm. And I can tell you about that, too. Because it's actually a real college, so you still have to have courses and everything. But a history class would be like an art history class. Mm-hmm. You know? And so there's all these interesting things there. But I'll backtrack. So high school. I drew all the time. I painted and drew pictures. Everyone knew this. And I was good at drawing. And... what's the art teacher's name? Mr.
Patterson.
Mr. Patterson.
JP, the cowboy.
JP. So JP would always be like, you should go to college. I like JP. He'd be like, you should go to college and stuff. And I was like, I can draw already. Like, I don't, like what? Like, it's expensive and stuff. And so I didn't really have plans. In fact, I never had planned out anything. Mm-hmm. I don't want to take too much time. I don't know. But, like, I lived day to day. Right. I was actually almost a feral human being. Right. Like, people... Like, I didn't realize this till looking back later, after I get hired and have jobs, when, like, bosses go, that's not normal. Like, did you always act like, did you always do this? Like, and then people make you look back on your life, and you look back and see what was going on, and you realize... Like, maybe that wasn't normal, the way I behaved. Right. You know?
Like, if you urinate in public in the city, you get a ticket for that.
I didn't do that.
No, I'm just saying, like, in Heartland, if you, like, people had a tendency to just piss anywhere they wanted if they felt like it. Well... And so you think that's normal.
well, okay,
so... up there.
Yeah, so, well, the thing is this, like... The way I lived at home was super chaotic. And everything was, like, there was no such thing as making plans. Right. Because no one's promises or plans ever happened. Like, everything was just wishful thinking and then catastrophe and then wishful thinking and
you don't want to set yourself up.
Right. I'm going to, like, if this doesn't make sense, it's because my dad was a drug addict. So, like, people that, and a Vietnam veteran. Right. So, people that live with war veterans that are addicted to drugs, there is no planning for anything. I remember, like, my parents at one point would say, like, things would be so bad, and then they would do that thing where they're like, well, next weekend we'll go to the beach or something, because, like, they're trying to, like, make up for something horrible that just happened. Mm. And then, of course, by the next weekend, something
comes and you don't go.
You don't go. And this goes on for years and years. And I remember one time, I know this is a tangent, but it kind of sets up how I was in school, how I was. Mm-hmm. I remember my parents said, we have really good news. And she called me and Steve and Kristen over. And she's like, we're going to Disneyland. And we didn't even say anything. We just stared blankly. Like, I remember this vividly. Because we just like, went, like kind of nodded and just were like, okay. And then my mom was like, aren't you excited? And like, we just like didn't say anything. We were just like, you know, of course we never went. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, it never came true.
But all of you deep down knew you weren't going.
We all knew. Like, we knew that we didn't believe anything that wasn't happening that day.
Right.
That included eating food.
Right.
Money.
Yeah.
The electricity being on, like anything. Like your parents being there or not there. Like, my dad might be there one day and then be gone for 10 days.
Right.
Like, you don't know. He would be in Detroit or something. So, like nothing I did was more than a day ahead. And sometimes, basically, I was living like an hour at a time.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Interesting.
And in hindsight, you can kind of see that. Because nothing I did was for fear of the consequences, if you think about it. Mm-hmm. Like, I would say and do things without any fear of the long-lasting effects of anything I did, you know? Mm. Like, if I thought something would be funny, I would do it, and I didn't care if I got hurt or something else horrible happened. Mm. Like, I would just fucking do it. Because at the time, it made me happy, you know? Like, I just wanted people to be happy.
Right.
So, in art class, and I would also draw as an escape. It's a great thing, but I did it from an early age. That's why I was really good.
Right.
Like, from the time I was like, when you're little and you don't want to hear shit going on.
You can stare at a white piece of paper.
You can stare at a piece of paper. You can just keep drawing, you know.
Until that thing you don't want to pay attention to goes away, which might take all day.
It might take all day. So, and one day Mr. Patterson was gone and we had a substitute teacher. And the substitute teacher was a lady. And I was drawing something, and she came up, and she goes, whoa. She goes, did you draw that? And I was like, yes, you know. And she's like, wow. She goes, that's really good. She's like, I bet you could go to art college. She's like, you could probably get a scholarship. And I was like, okay, yeah. I'm like, well, I don't think I'm going because I can already draw. And she goes, yeah, but she goes, that's not the only reason you go to college. And then I was like, what else is there? Mm. And she goes, well, you go for exposure. So this is before the internet, right? Mm-hmm. So I didn't know the word exposure. I didn't know what exposure was.
Right.
It's the same as getting out there. You have to get out there, right? Into the world. Mm-hmm. And she's like, yeah, you have to go to art college so that you can figure out how to, other people can see what you're doing, you know? Mm-hmm. And I was I was only logic. That's all I used. And I was like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. I was like, okay, I'll go. And it was that easy. Like I at that moment I was like, good enough. Mm-hmm. And the next day JP came in and I said, JP, I'm going to go to college. And he was like, what? He was all excited and he's like, you're going to college now? And he's like, we don't have much time. We only have 2 weeks before the end of the whatever. Mm. And he's like, you need like, a still life for your portfolio. And I was like, okay. I'm like, well, just tell me, what do I have to do?
Yeah.
He's like, okay, there's 2 things you have to do. You have to take an SAT test. Is it the SAT or the ACT? It might be the SAT.
Yeah.
And he goes, and you have to draw a still life. I'm like what? And he's like your boot. And I said, fine. And I took the boot right off at that moment. I took my combat boot off my leg, set it on my desk, got my ballpoint pen, and just started drawing like I always did.
Right.
Just started drawing the boot, and it was boring as hell.
Yeah. And then you're like, that's done, now what?
It was like 1 week.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't even finish because you only get art class for like an hour. So think about it. So like I only spent a few hours in it, you know. So I'm drawing this boot, the ballpoint pen, and then I have to take this SAT test. So I'm like, what's this SAT test about? So like somebody else, like I got Chris Grease help, like he's like, you're going to take the SAT. He's like, I got to take it to get into the Marines or the Navy SEALs. Mm. He's like, I'll study it with you. I'm like, study? I'm like, what? Huh? And then Ann Miller was like, I have this book. And it was like 3 inches thick. And it said how to study for the SAT. I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, what is this shit? And they're like, it's this week. They're like, it was tomorrow. I remember this. So Ann gives me the book. Chris is all nervous. And you have to go on a Saturday to take the test. Mm-hmm. So this is really interesting because it kind of goes to your thing about sleep. This is kind of cool. So I'm like, and before I wasn't nervous because, again, I live day to day, so I don't think about planning things out, you know. And so she gives me this book. It's huge. And I go home, and I kind of put it off, and the test is the next day. And I'm like, how do you study for a test that you don't know the answer? But I'm like, okay, I'm going to try this. So I open the book up, and I'm on the first page, and I'm reading it. And the whole first page is just trying to set you up for what's going on. It was so boring, I fell asleep. Because you know how when you're the kind of person that when you're doing things nonstop, as soon as you kind of chill out, your brain thinks you're trying to sleep. Mm-hmm. That's what happened. I fell asleep. Probably the best thing I could do because I got a full night's sleep. Yeah. Right? In the morning I woke up, I was actually in decent shape mentally. So I go to the ACT testing thing. It was at a different school, I think. They do it in a room. It was really interesting. I don't know if you've ever taken an SAT. It's 3 letters. It's like an ACT or an SAT. It's a college placement test. And what it is they actually, in the test, they have you read something, which is basically all the information you need to answer the questions right after. Okay? Mm-hmm. So the test is really interesting. Most of the tests is like this. The English part, you need to know English, but I was in honors English classes because English. I like reading and stuff. Yeah. So, but even that, you could still read it and kind of figure it out. The only part of the test that you needed to memorize to do really well were math equations that went into high levels of math where you needed to memorize this is the only way you could do it, is if you had equations memorized. Mm-hmm. So I did the test. I got 100% in the 3 parts. And then in the math part, it was just really kind of bad. Yeah. But it was like good. And then, so overall, I got like a 30-something, which was like I didn't know, but it was like a really high score on the test. In fact, like Chris Grease didn't even get into, his wasn't even high enough to get him into the Navy. He took it. And like out of everyone I went with, they were like, when the test results came back, they're like, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, I got a 30. And they were all like, what? Like, you got I'm like, yeah. I'm like, the answers were like right there. So like, what's interesting is you can't actually plan for it. Like, and so the test was legit. Yeah. Like, it was basically like reading something and then being able to take that information to solve the next thing. So that was out of the way. High enough to get me into any college. Mm-hmm. The boot, I almost finished, which is funny because when I got to the end, I couldn't finish it, but Kendall College of Art and Design had an art contest. I submitted the boot. I came in first place. They called me up and said, this whole interview sounds like I'm bragging about myself, but this is just facts. So they said, which is kind of ironic. They said, there's nothing we can teach this guy.
Except maybe.
They said, we cannot teach him. They said, we cannot teach him to draw any better. Because they said, this is what's called the master level. Like they said, this is like the highest level of drawing. And because what it was me, which is interesting because I like using my imagination, but on the boot, I just looked at it and drew it. Right. But I drew fucking everything. So like when you look at the leather, you can see like even, and I'm good with a pen, ballpoint pen. So it didn't, back then people weren't drawing in ball. Like there wasn't like a medium you used to get into college.
Right. It probably still isn't.
Right. So they gave me $28,000.
It was almost like you were sculpting.
Yes, that's right.
Because you couldn't make a mistake.
Yeah.
Or else.
It's interesting.
Because you can't fix it.
And so then I got a full scholarship into college, and I went to college. It was a rapid kind of what's interesting is now jumping back to what a difference a teacher can make. The substitute teacher was responsible for me going to college that one day.
Right, and you probably never saw her again.
I never saw her before and have never seen her after. Right. And she's like fully responsible for like an insanely huge part of my life. Like that 1 hour of that one day where she gave me one good reason to do that no one else even mentioned. Right. That was all it took, you know.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Yeah. And I remember at some point contacting you because we had been out of touch at that point for a little while. And I think I asked you what you were learning, and you were pissed because you were doing color charts.
Right. So this is
color charts again.
Absolutely. So what I found out is this. So when you go, this is interesting because I could talk, like, these are all lead to like really interesting stories about how shit works.
Yeah.
So right, like it goes, and then they were saying they couldn't teach me, and I was like, well, but I'm here for the exposure, right? This is, I understand.
You're like, when is this exposure thing?
Yeah, like, what's the fucking exposure? Another funny thing, they only had one color. They had a computer lab of Macintosh computers. Mm-hmm. Again, this is at the same time. Think about this. They had a room full of Apple computers.
Right.
Which we got
Apple IIe's?
No, they were decent. They were decent size. They might have been 2Es or whatever. But they had one full color CRT monitor, which was the only, like, at the time, that was fucking crazy. They have a full color monitor on a Mac. Like, and it was big, so like it was big, like, you know, like how, yeah. And I used to love when no one was sitting at it. I was like, holy shit. That's where it was at. But anyway, the color wheels. Yeah, so then when you go in, you have to take basic classes. Because what I find out is, do you know who goes to art school? Rich people. Because it's private. Like,
because they've decided.
Like $28,000 in 1992 it sounds like a lot now. It was more then. Yeah. Like, that's a shitload of money, like, for college. So you end up with, like, privileged kids that are just like, I want to go to art school. And then they get in because they have money, right? Or you end up with a few people that are super fucking talented, and they got in because they got scholarships or, like, you know, like the few that got the scholarships.
Yep.
But a lot of the people there was a lady who was a doctor. She had been a surgeon and a doctor for years and years because her family was all doctors. She was 10 years into being a doctor and was like, I never wanted to do this. I don't want to do this. And then she was in the art school because she was independently wealthy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And she's like, I wanted to do art and they wouldn't let me. Like, kind of sad, you know?
Right.
So what happens is they have to start at the base level, because just because you're in art college doesn't mean you know shit about art, which is really weird. So they have to treat it like you don't know anything, okay? But, you know, I mean, right, it's like, okay, yeah. Now, the classes I really liked were these. I had a speech class. This teacher of the speech class, you think, well, why do you have a speech class at art school? I'll tell you why. Because whether or not your art is good has nothing to do with you making money at it, which is true today, really. There's plenty of people that are super talented that make no money, and there's people that are marginally talented who are good talkers.
Right.
Right? It's the digital age now, so it's the same, though. It's like they're good at communicating, okay? If you can't communicate, you can't do anything. So that class I really, really liked. This guy, the speech class guy, he was from Harvard or Yale. I mean, his level of English was really high. And he not only taught us, or tried to teach you how to speak correctly, he would bring in newspapers, like, in media. He would bring in media from the U.S. media, because he was like a British guy, I think. He was both, but he was really smart. And he would read articles and show how the media uses words to manipulate minds. Mm-hmm. And so, like, once you understood what they were doing, you could also do it, but you were also aware of what was going on.
It's super interesting.
Just the way words are like,
the choice of words.
The choice of words to, like, words have double meanings. I mean, you can turn a phrase till it reads a million ways, you know? So, like, he would be like, read this article. And I remember I was really good at it because I was like, he's like, what does this mean? And a lot of people say it means this, this, and this. And I would be like, you can't tell either way. And he's like, you're right. He goes, you think you know what it means because of this implied, but he goes, in reality, it doesn't tell you shit. And so, like, that class was super interesting, and also you had to get up and do presentations in front of the class, speaking, you know, doing that. And so that wasn't art. Right. But that was useful. That was useful from the college. The drawing I could do, they would drill you. You would draw like hours a day, so you got better at it. Like, it was tough, honestly. Yeah. It was like nonstop. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done. But man, the skateboarding was awesome in that city. Grand Rapids is all hilly, So, like, everything is, like, concrete where they're trying to, like, straighten it out. So everything is, like, oh, man, it was awesome. I loved it.
I've never really spent any time there.
It was one of the funnest places.
I went to one house show, like a punk rock show that Grumpy John played in a basement.
Was it in the Enclave?
It was a house. I don't know.
Oh, man.
And then
there was awesome. Listen, the music scene back then. We could talk about all this shit forever because always back then, like it's awesome.
Yeah.
Again, there's no internet.
Right.
So how do you end up at punk shows? Like it was a great thing. It was all like the flyer and then so-and-so. And in Grand Rapids specifically, I mean, I seen Rancid in this basement, you know, like with their own amps, like just set them on the floor in one room, not any bigger than this room.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Just fucking awesome. I saw No Effects play in a room above a Dairy Queen, and the floor was almost caving in. You know? The lights were on. Like, there's no mood lighting. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, just no one there's a poser. There's no such thing. Like, it was just fucking great.
Yeah.
You know? It was good times.
Yeah. I hear...
Suicide Machines. Mustard Plug lived there. The guy worked at the record store. Now, they're like ska, kind of, but I mean, it was fun as hell. You know.
Is that where you saw Green Day and they let you in?
Green Day put me on the guest list.
That's a good story.
Then that's another whole funny story how that ended up.
Yeah.
I mean I can tell that story if you want. I mean I can.
I know it, but
yeah. So because the Green Day story goes back to Detroit.
Right.
Because we saw them in Detroit.
Right.
So. We saw them in Detroit. I don't know what year it was. They were opening for Bad Religion, maybe?
Or
Suicide Machines were opening.
No, it was Social Distortion.
See, what's funny is I don't remember the Social Distortion part at all.
It was so loud.
I just remember Green Day and Suicide Machines.
Okay, all right. Well,
but no, there was another band.
I could be wrong.
Green Day was not the headliner.
I remember Social Distortion being so loud that we went to the basement by the men's bathroom in the basement to get away from how loud it was.
Get away from Social Distortion.
And that was not far enough. So we left the building.
And that's where Green Day was outside.
And we were all hanging out outside.
Right, we were hanging out with Green Day. And then the bass player, he was really sociable.
Yeah.
The what's his name? The singer, he was just kind of, he was like a mopey teen, you know. He was kind of forlorn.
I don't even remember him.
He was there the whole time. Okay. He was just reading, they had the bookmobile.
Yeah.
And he was just like sitting there. I mean, he was with us, but he was just like, he was doing his thing where he was like,
so boring, I don't even remember.
Yeah, he was so boring, yeah. But the bass player was fun.
Yeah.
He was a good guy and he was fun.
Yeah.
So then, when I'm in Grand Rapids, all of a sudden Dookie came out and the shit was just blown through the fucking roof. I mean, that was like nuts. And I didn't even know the scope of it because we still like Green Day. I mean, so, okay, I had a friend and he's like, hey, let's go to the Green Day show. And I can't remember the name of the place in Grand Rapids. I'm like, yeah, let's go. So we drive there and we get there and it was like insane. Like I'm in the parking lot and this is like fucking crazy to explain. There's all these moms and kids like running around freaking out trying to buy tickets. There's no tickets. It's been sold out. And I'm like, what the fuck is this? Like, I didn't know yet, like, right. about how big they were. Like, right. I was actually confused. Mm-hmm. I didn't understand what was going on. And so, I'm like, this is crazy. I'm like, is this for Green Day? You know? Mm-hmm. And we get out of the car, we park the car, and we go up to the front, and we're like, yeah. And while we're there, they're like, do you have tickets? Like, people are like, do you have tickets? Like, the most obnoxious... There's football players walking around. I'm not like trying to diss, but like it was like weird.
Right.
And I was like, dude, I'm like, let's get out of here, you know? So we're walking back and the bass player was in the parking lot. And what's fucked up is everyone's there freaking out about Green Day. They don't even know who he is. Like they can't even recognize the guy.
Right.
And he's like, hey man, he's like, where are you going? And I'm like, oh, hey, I'm like, and I was like, yeah, I remember in Detroit. He's like, yeah, blah, blah, blah. And we talked for a minute. And I'm like, yeah, dude. I'm like, they're sold out. And this is fucking weird. And he's like, don't go. Like, and what was one of those things is so strange. Like,
you were a security.
We were probably like the only people he wanted at the show. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, he was like, don't go. He's like, I'm going to go put you on the guest list right now. And he literally walked right up to the front thing and just like put our names on.
Yeah.
And we were like, thanks. Right? Thanks.
Thanks for prolonging this.
So, I want to tell you, this show was weird.
Yeah?
It was weird. There were so many people there, and it was all football players just taking their shirts off and screaming.
Yeah.
And they had to keep stopping, and they were like, can you, like, they were like, there was all these, like, mini fights and arguments, and it was not, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was not the same experience like Detroit. It was not fun.
Right.
It was just fucking...
Well, it was a pop culture phenomenon.
It was yes.
They might as well have been a boy band at that point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was like, but it was like a boy band for boys almost. It was girls too, but like, for some reason, football players, I remember, were way into it. I don't know. They were even talking to us at school all of a sudden.
Yeah.
About, and where it's like, I had football players like, hey, right. Green Day or something. I'm like, whoa. Like, is this like, they wake up in an alternate...
In high school?
High school.
Okay, so
like at the end of...
Remind me of something.
Yeah, at the end of high school.
Right. So, let me say...
Dookie came out at the end of high school, right?
I think it was after.
Okay, maybe it was after. Are you sure?
I think it was. Because... But I could be... I never...
Okay, no, what, you're right.
I haven't listened to that.
Maybe. Maybe it was 9 Inch Nails where they were making fun of me for. I get them mixed up. Or... No, you know what it was? It was Bill Reedy who was telling me about all the football players. That's what it was. Okay. But because he was younger than me and he was still in the school.
Yeah.
He was still, and he was like, they were coming up to him and all of a sudden like...
All right. Well, something happened before all that while we were still in high school that rubbed me the wrong way.
Yeah.
And I think it was the beginning of all of it. And it was when... we were doing our thing as we did every day, minding our own business, living in this bubble, but not being part of the bubble.
We were so in the bubble, we didn't even know. Like
we were in our concentrated, tinier bubble in this giant bubble.
Right.
Nonsense.
Yeah.
And then one day, Smells Like Teen Spirit came.
Okay, it was Nirvana. Okay, it was Nirvana.
The second that hit single.
It was something that did it. It was Nirvana.
Smells Like Teen Spirit.
Yeah.
Came out on MTV and everywhere.
And see, I didn't even have MTV.
I didn't either.
Like, that's what's fucking crazy.
Right. But what happened was everyone we didn't get along with looked at us like we were their... Like we were their living version of
Nirvana.
And all of a sudden, the most, like, the popular...
Dude.
Hot girls.
Yes.
The Jennies.
Yep. And the thing was, I remember all of a sudden, like, I was in class, and they're all like, this girl goes, you can touch my boobs. And I was like, no, just like that.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? And she's like, yeah. She's like, you want to go back into the back? And I'm like, aren't you, like, a fucking cheerleader or something?
I remember we were sitting in art class drawing the comics, and next thing we were like surrounded by like 5 girls, and they were like, let us see. And they're like reading them and passing them around, and they're laughing hysterically.
Yeah, it's like, you don't even get it.
I'm like, we don't even get it.
Yeah, you don't understand.
You're making up a punchline that's not there.
Yeah.
And this isn't funny, and it's not meant to be consumed by you.
Yeah, that's weird.
That's when it all changed.
But then, I mean, we were out of there soon after.
Very soon.
Yeah. No. We had to suffer. I didn't really suffer, but I mean, like, well, this is interesting. We may have been the butt of jokes, but I was so oblivious I wouldn't have even known. Like, I'm pretty sure there may have been people that may have been condescending or something, but like honestly, I wouldn't know. Like, you know what I mean? I don't even think we were aware. Honestly, I don't think if people made comments or like. We were oblivious. It's like it didn't exist.
We were so concerned with making each other on
Yes.
that we didn't give two fucks about.
There was one day I was you know how the football players used to hang out in the middle of the hallway and smack books out of people's hands. Yeah, it was seriously like that. Yeah, I remember one day I was walking and a football player came up and smacked my books, but they didn't fall because I just squeezed them really tight.
Yeah.
I was very strong. Like all I did was practice kung fu non-stop all day. Like I was basically Bruce Lee. Right. You know, like all I did. Like I skateboarded and I did kung fu with people. Like we built a dojo. I mean, and I just remember turning my head and looking for a second, and the kid was like, and then he just kind of stopped and just walked away, and that was it. And then I just kept walking. Like that was it. It was like, what the fuck are you doing? It was just like, don't bother me, you jackass. You know, like I don't even need to know you're there. You know.
Yeah. That. It was so Napoleon.
Yeah. I mean, those guys were like, the crazy thing is like, God, they suck so bad. You know. I mean, I'm sure they mistreated people all the time, but I didn't really know. Like, in hindsight, like, violence does not solve anything. You know what I mean? Like, I probably could have been a person that could go around like punching people, like trying to beat people up for beating up other people,
right.
But that wouldn't do anything. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's no point. Like, I was not concerned with like beating people up at all, ever. You know?
Do you think they're trying to throw a football over that mountain?
Dude, they're probably like still
like Uncle
yeah,
Rico.
Yeah, they're probably still in that thing. I was also into martial arts. That's another thing.
Right.
So that we haven't talked about, but there was skateboarding, there was the comic books, and then I personally in Canada were heavy into Bruce Lee and martial arts. To the point where we built our own dojo up above his garage with all the training equipment we had seen in all these like Shaolin Kung Fu movies, and we were actually doing, like, I don't think humans were supposed to actually be doing these things.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like folklore. Mm-hmm. But like all the weird like training things that were insane to do, you know, and we did it because I don't think we knew it was actually not, but I mean, it was probably was real, but like, you know, like it was just like, oh, that's how you get that strong. That's fucking crazy. Well, like, gotta do it. Yeah. Like, that's how you do it. So like we had these sticks with weights at the end and we would lift them up just like, you know, until your arm would like fall, and then you do the other one just like in the movie. Like, yeah, the guy did it till he couldn't lift his arm anymore.
Right.
We'd do it. I was doing probably well over 100 push-ups a day. I would do pull-ups, 100 pull-ups.
Wow.
I would do...
I don't think I can do one pull-up.
Right. And then in gym class, and I won...
Workout.
I won the presidential... Back then, they used to give out these... I had the presidential physical... I still have it. It's framed with a thing. Mm-hmm. They gave me the presidential physical fitness award because... In gym, like, they would test your scores, and they're like, you have all the highest scores. Like, yeah. And then one teacher's like, your body fat ratio is really low. Like, when they tested us for body fat.
Yeah.
And, I mean, because, think about, back then, there's no internet, right?
Right.
You skateboard.
Right.
You
barely
barely eat. I mean, if you don't have a car, you fucking walked everywhere. Like, it was crazy, like, how much better shape you were in back then. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And we would skate we would skateboard all day.
All day, all night.
We would get chased.
See you in the morning, and then we'd wake up and skate, and then it was crazy.
And it also wasn't acceptable by the public skateboarding.
Right. Like, you had to run away.
We would get chased by...
You had to run away.
Cops and business owners with shotguns in the middle of Ann Arbor.
You had to flee. You want to hear a funny story about the police? Mm-hmm. Well, this is just one story. So this is a good story. This is kind of like a happy ending. Mm-hmm. So me and Canada were skating once at a school, and Canada took out like one of the garbage cans because we were gonna ollie and stuff, you know. And Canada could ollie pretty high. He actually at one point said, I matched the record for, and he really could. He could ollie like super high. A cop pulls up into the school and he's like, what are you guys doing? And we're like, we're skateboarding. He goes, we got to report that somebody may have broken in, which is kind of funny because one time me and him did break in and we skated inside the school, but this wasn't that night.
Yeah.
We weren't breaking the steal. We were just to skate like in this, like
the smooth surface.
Yeah, it was cool. There's cleaning people there, but we were skating around and like in the audience. It was awesome. So anyway, this is that night, and we did see some people on the roof or something before, but we don't care, you know. Mm-hmm. And we're like, yeah. We're like, yeah, we might have seen someone on the roof, and the cops were like, yeah, well, I mean, you're suspects, like, because you're the only people here right now. And we're like, no, we're skateboarding. And he's like, how do I know you're real skateboarders? And I'm like thinking about it. I'm like, well, I mean, it's kind of, I mean, maybe. I mean, I don't know. Like, we have skateboards.
Right.
And then the cop goes to Canada, he goes, if you can ollie over that trash can, you're free to go. And it was like a fucking, like, reality TV show or something. Because you know how, like, when you're nervous, like, you do worse?
Yeah.
You know, but Canada was never, like, really nervous about anything.
Yeah.
But, like, he rolls up, and it was a full-size trash can, and he just fucking ollied over it clean. And the cop was like, wow, and he just drove away. And left us. I was like, wow, that was cool, actually. Like,
in Heartland?
It wasn't Heartland.
Oh, okay.
It wasn't Heartland, but it was near. It was a school on some, it wasn't like, I'm trying to think what school it was. It wasn't Heartland High School.
Right.
It could have been in between.
Because there's no cops at that.
Right.
In Heartland.
Yes.
Like, I think one drove through once a week.
This was in between Heartland and Brighton, and when you go down 23, there's like this weird area. There was some school over there.
Yeah.
And we were in the parking lot.
So it was probably a Brighton cop.
Yeah. It was cool.
Hold on, I'm going to pee. I'm going to leave that going.
Oh, really?
It's going to take me a second.
You can pause it. I'll go get
I don't like pausing it because it gives me one more thing.
Oh. Is it 3:54? Oh, okay. It's probably like 2. It's 2:14. No, it's not 3. 3:50. I'm just seeing what's in my backpack.
Your bag?
In my bag. It's in my bag. Probably stink bugs. There was a bag in the garage, and it was full of stink bugs. Like, in the bag. Like, I was like, why are you in here?
Yeah.
Like, how did you get in here and why?
Right.
Like, why are you hanging out in a bag? Like, that's not fun. And then the counterfeit badminton rackets. Hey, Eric, why don't you tell us how you swindled everybody with your Chinese knockoff badminton racket scheme, empire plan, your master Yonex.
That lasted very successful.
Who do you think you're fooling? You're not fooling anybody. You did everything right, but you skimped on the laser engraver. You blew it. Capiche?
I mean, if he went that far, like, I feel bad for the guys that did go that far. They nailed everything, every detail, and then they get the date wrong.
Dude.
How did you overlook the date? Because if you just got the date right, then they'd be like, oh, it's authentic.
Yeah, that's the only telltale sign. God. I know this is recording. No, if anyone ever listened, they would have no idea what the fuck we're talking about. But,
I can edit it out or leave it in. They can ask in the comments if they feel like it.
What? Badminton?
All right.
Not interesting. All right.
So, it could go a bunch of different ways, but one thing I want to get to is, like, after Kendall, you go to Kendall, I go this way. I'm at the State Theater, St. Andrews, but we're actually, like, we're not in the same neighborhood at all for a long time, and we're not really hanging out much. But at some point, like, Beto stays something. I
was making Beto shirts in Grand Rapids still. I had somebody else print them for me.
So this is what I was curious about, because I can't...
And the comics as well.
Comics kept going.
There's a teacher who mentioned it the other day who was a friend of mine. Mm-hmm. He made a comment about the Beto comics. Mm-hmm. Because to some people, that was, like, the highlight of, like, their whole... If they're in some educational system and they do, that's like what they remember, making like Beto comics, you know? Okay. So even in art school, they were hugely popular.
Okay.
Yeah. I made Beto films at college.
Right. Yeah.
I wish I had them still.
Yeah.
But I made Mango Madness and I made oh my God. I made one that was so cool. It was a knockoff of like the movie The Thing because my friend had a cat that was missing a leg. And in Grand Rapids in the wintertime, you get this lake effect snow, like, because it's on the west coast.
Oh, yeah.
And they have a ton of snow.
Right.
And the year I was there was so much snow that when you went down the sidewalk, sometimes you couldn't see over the snowbanks. They had the machine blast it out.
Another planet.
And so there were times, and the thing is, we still had to get to class and back. Mm-hmm. And, like, we had, like, the military, like, cold weather parka. Like, I had my green, like, I still have my green army green jacket, but it had like a hood attachment. And then my friend and so it kind of looked like, and he had a beard going because it was and it looked like from the movie The Thing, the original movie The Thing.
Yeah.
And so we made a movie one night. It was so cold and snowy in his room, and it was called The Swick because that was his cat's name, and it was really good. It was fucking hilarious. And then we made another one called Mango Madness with Dave Davies, who's became a art teacher. He's a really good artist. Huh. And he mentioned it not that long ago, and also Beto Comics. So, yeah, that's pretty neat.
Well, when did Beto's shirts start? Was that was before? Were you
Beto shirts started before college.
Before college, were you at Kids Cam before college?
No, but I hand drew shirts.
So were these the transfers yet? Or?
No, like the very first ones I drew by hand.
Right.
Like Tom Peters.
Yeah. Like rats off to you.
Like rats off to you.
Yeah.
And there weren't many, but people wanted them.
Wow.
Of course, because they're...
I don't remember those.
Yeah, you might not remember.
Yeah.
So I drew... This is what's kind of neat. Like, I would actually do like... I just drew them. You know, I did one... My first one... Okay. There's an
Did you draw them with ballpoint pen?
Marker. Oh, permanent marker.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I did permanent marker on a white shirt.
Yeah.
You know, and then I did like 6 different ones, and people were like, can I have... Like, and looking back, I mean, it's kind of neat, like, having a drawn shirt.
One of a kind.
Right?
Just kind of like your comic.
Yeah,
the
right?
First comic.
Yeah, so one of the first ones I drew was I made For You Later as a real shirt, and it's that one that has the girl, like, pointing at her head, and she's got, like, a coat on.
Yeah.
No, I didn't invent it. It's like a girl... And she's got like almost like a trench coat, and she's pointing like at her head.
Is it anime?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's from Appleseed or something.
Okay, yeah.
It's from Appleseed. So I drew that before I ever learned how to make it. Like I drew that person on a shirt.
Right.
And sold that one. And then I drew a couple more, you know, and people wanted them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kids Cam was after college. because I had to drop out
at some point.
Because Ian, because Ian I got pregnant.
Right.
So that once I got pregnant, that
happened out in Grand Rapids, or
this is what happened.
Hanging out there, or were you?
Yeah. So what happened was I was on break from college. I was back in Heartland visiting, and things happened. Right. So then, once I found out Willa was pregnant, that was it. I mean, at that moment, that's where basically, like, any childhood I had, like, ended. Like, immediately. Right. Like, immediately and abruptly, and I was only 18.
Right.
Which is crazy. When you look back, I mean, all these things we talk about, I mean, we're not even adults. Like, we're just, I was 18,
Yeah, you were 18. I was 17.
We were completely self-sufficient. Do you know what I mean? Like, I was the thing was, I was already self-sufficient because my dad had stopped working at time, like, we lost our house, remember, like, in Heartland. Yeah. And me and Steve had to keep the business going, so we were actually paying the bills anyway. So,
Steve is his brother.
Yeah.
If anyone
Steve's my brother.
Needs to know.
So me and Steve were washing windows and cleaning businesses to make money, but we lost the house, and then my mom ended up in an apartment. My dad was in that one house where it was so cold I had icicles in my room. There was only one heat vent in the whole house. Yeah. And so, like, times were really rough, but, like, I didn't really, again, like, because I didn't care, because I never, like, again, looked, like, past, like, certain, right. And so, like, going to college, I mean, the thing was, I had a scholarship, but that didn't pay my bills. Like, they didn't pay how. I had to find a place to live. There's no dorm. I lived in an old house. In Grand Rapids, it was really cool because there's all these old houses. In fact, there's a Frank Lloyd Wright house right down from my house. I don't know if you know. No. He's an architect.
Well, I'm aware of him.
They're really cool, yeah. And I lived in an old house. They just convert them into rental, like, and it was fun because you don't know who your roommate's going to be. There's no internet. You have to meet and figure everything out like one day. Yeah. And so the houses, you can walk around the town at night, and what's cool is these old houses are full of, like, college students, and people are, like, literally just hollering out of windows, like, hey, like, what's up? What are you doing? Like, it was really cool. Mm-hmm. Like, very, like, real social atmosphere, right. Yeah. People would hear you laughing, and they would come down the street and go, what are you guys laughing about? And then you'd go, oh, we're watching Norm McDonald. Do you want to hang out? Yeah, hi, yeah. Like shit like that. It's just like really cool. Yeah. That like doesn't happen anymore, like at all. Mm-hmm. No, it doesn't. At Kendall, too, it was cool. There was a lot of kids from all around the world. Mm-hmm. So you got different languages going on. It's the first time I had like around actual true. I mean, if you're from Heartland, there's no culture. There's no culture. There's none.
There was no culture.
And then I'm in a school where there's like Chinese, girls that can draw like better than me. Like just, and you're like, holy shit. Like people that are like nuts, like mm-hmm. good. And you're like, whoa, from fucking all over. I had Germany, Yugoslavia, all over. It's fucking awesome. Yeah. You pick up languages. Sandra Marble, she was Korean, and I remember one of the happiest days was when she cooked Korean egg rolls from scratch, and we all ate them, and we were like, fuck, that's amazing, Like, that's the shit you get. That's the shit that was actually the most valuable stuff from my experience. Like, the exposure thing ended up being bullshit. Really. Yeah. Well, I mean, in terms of people seeing my art and it, like, progressing my career, it didn't really help, Yeah. But the experience of going out into the world and meeting, like, just diving, like, right in. You know what I mean? Like, just like, okay, now I'm, like, I left this little fucking town, Right. And I'm in a multicultural hub of intelligent people, that want to create shit.
Right.
Like, it was really good.
Yeah.
It was a really good atmosphere, and the skateboarding was good. Again.
Right.
I bought a motorcycle. I took some of my loan money. So the thing was, I had a scholarship, and then I had what was called a grant. Mm-hmm. The grant was for supplies, because art supplies were expensive. Like, super expensive. Right. Like, a book is like $100.
Yeah.
So I took 300 of it and bought a Yamaha. It was awesome. So that was, because I always had motorcycles, growing up, that I bought myself, like, obviously. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I had a sweet Yamaha, so I would ride that around. I never even registered it. I just rode it illegally. It was sweet. I mean, I rode it all the way back to Heartland and back.
Right. Yeah. It was your main vehicle.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you go back to Heartland, probably for a family or holiday situation.
Yes.
And the birds and the bees happen.
I go back.
And you have a son.
I'm walking, because I was walking somewhere, and then Ela drove by and was like, "Hey, oh my God, how are you doing?" I'm like, "Yeah." She's like, "You need a ride?" I'm like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Oh, you mean that kind of ride?" But yes.
Wow.
So, Ela, and I always liked her. In school, people change. I'm not saying, like, I don't want her, like, she'll never hear this, but, like, at that time, I mean, I liked her.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't have Ian if I didn't.
Right.
So, and I did not regret it at the time either.
Right.
I was like, again, like, I was like living life. Now I was more into planning because of the college. See, I was thinking ahead. So I was not as crazy, like, I was not as feral now.
Yeah.
And when she's like, "Yeah, well, I was all for it." I was like, because when I do something, I just do it to, like, the max. Like, I want to do the best I can. So she was like, "Yeah, I'm going to have a baby." I'm like, "Whoa, well, great." I'm like, "I'm going to leave art school, get it." Like, I was all for it. Like, I was like, I'll do whatever I have to do to make sure that this kid is the best kid of all time.
Right.
Like, it ended up being really difficult because she has some mental issues, It ended up becoming extremely difficult, Mm-hmm. But, like, way harder than it could, but that's the way shit is.
Yeah.
So then... Did
you go directly to Kids Cam? Or did...
Yeah, so...
Yeah, I mean, I remember...
No, I didn't.
I remember there was some...
So what happened was, I came back. This is what happened. I came back. I immediately... I sold the motorcycle to get money to put for an apartment. Mm-hmm. And then I was living with Layla, her dad's, in Fenton. Mm-hmm. And then she basically just snapped. Like, I didn't know at the time that she was like that. I had hints because sometimes she would do something. I thought she was being funny, but she wasn't. She's like bipolar or something. Mm. And then she was like, she was basically like just super cold. And she was like, "I don't love you. You need to leave." Like, it was like crazy weird. Mm-hmm. And at first I was like, well, shit, pregnant people I hear do weird things and stuff. But she was actually like really like crazy and violent and mean. And I realized that I honestly could not, like, she was serious. Like, I was like, whoa, this is weird. Because there was no fight, Mm-hmm. It went from one thing to, like, the other. Like, I was like, this is crazy, but this is the way it is.
Yeah.
And it was really sad. I was, like, heartbroken. But I ended up moving in with my Uncle Larry at Tipsico Lake. Yeah. So my Uncle Larry, who's a great, awesomest guy in the world, and also an amazing artist and just a great guy. And he was living there with his wife at the time, who was a Mormon school teacher with 2 daughters. And that was a funny experience.
Didn't they raise puppies or something?
She raised those cats with the smushed in faces.
Oh, I thought they were dogs.
No. And they walked around with diapers on. I got a lot of funny stories just from living there. And I know a lot about the Mormon religion.
Because of that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Like...
Don't Mormons wear diapers?
Listen...
Or something?
What's really...
Some magical diaper?
What's really funny is South Park once did an episode about Mormons, and nothing they did was fake.
Yeah.
And the thing came across as like an insane comedy, and I'm like, nothing they're saying is untrue. Yeah. Like, do you realize that it's not even a parody? It's 100% factual how fucking weird this is.
I think they have a Broadway play.
I hope so, because it's really interesting.
Based on...
Well, I love to learn stuff, so I took the book and I read it myself, the Book of Mormon.
That's what the play's called, actually.
The Book of Mormon. Yeah, Brigham Young in Utah. I know all about it. I know this is going off on these crazy tangents, but I mean, shit's, like that. Yeah. So at the time, what's sad is my Aunt Grace and my Uncle Larry ended up getting a divorce. And he left, but I couldn't just leave like he could, because, I mean, I was living there, and then I had Ian, and I was also, like, she would work, and I was, like, taking care of the daughters at the time, as, like, kind of like a help, you know what I mean? Like, because I was the only adult then.
Yeah.
So that was really interesting, because the oldest one, Charity, she was almost done with high school. So what was kind of cool is I was still going to punk shows and stuff with her. I was like, because, I could drive, like, so that was fun.
Yeah.
Because I'm not that old. I'm like 19 years old. Like, I'm a dad, but I'm like, I want to still, like, so it's fun. So, like,
yeah,
I got to, like, kind of raise them. Now, the younger one, she was too, like, I still, like, taught her kung fu and stuff, but I wasn't as close in age, so, I didn't, like, hang, but she was a great person, but, she ended up going into the military, and she remembers saying something like how, I was a really good fighter, because I remember you taught me kung fu, and I was like, whoa. She'd like looked really tough, My cousin Charity, she's a great person, and we had some really fun times. We were vegetarians, at that time, like, for years. I didn't eat meat. We did it as an experiment. It was fucking hilarious.
Yeah.
Me and Charity are like, what's this vegetarian thing all about? And we're like, let's try it. Let's do it for a year or two. Like, we were just like, to see if there's, like, everything was very scientific, and we became vegetarians, and I cooked all the meals, all vegetarian. And I did all the cooking, like, not all, but mostly, like, which is cool, so, yeah. And then Kiz Cam is the screen printing place you're referring to, right? So Kiz Cam is the t-shirt place. So what I was doing is, when I lived at my Uncle Larry's, there was a guy in the neighborhood who painted houses. I was helping him paint. This is before Kiz Cam. And that's a good job. Painting makes money.
Sure. I
would paint with him, and then I would also work nights at a Chinese restaurant. Now, at the time, I had split custody with and in fact, I never actually got full custody, even though I was in court many times, because of really bizarre... The court system, it was set up through Howell, because he was born in Howell, and they were very anti-male. They were very pro-woman.
Well, that's just how...
Yeah, and so,
still
even though I went in, this is crazy, to set up... Because I couldn't do things cordially, like with Hila, because you couldn't talk to her. Like, it was craziness. So, like, you can't deal with a child and an unstable adult and, like, have a kid involved and have fights. I mean, she was violent, too. I mean, she would hit me. And so I was like, okay, I have to set something up legally. And when I went to do it, when we were in court, I remember the really sad thing was, every time I went to say something, they told me I couldn't talk because I didn't have a lawyer. But she got a free appointed lawyer. And the lawyer told the court that I was a child abuser, because that's what the law said. Now, the law says she didn't tell them that. And once that question is raised, they have to do an investigation.
Yeah.
While the investigation is pending, they took Ian away from me. So I went in to try to get more, like, scheduled, proper visitation and everything, and they ended up taking him away from me.
Wow.
Like, and it was horrible, and I was so upset.
How long did that last?
Lasted 2 months until they got around to do the investigation. And you know what they did? They came and did an interview, and they go, are you child? I'm like, no. And they're like, oh, yeah, okay. And that was it. And then I was like, fuck this. Like, it was, I mean, there's so many, I don't want to talk about stressful stories, but, I mean, there's plenty of them. You know what I mean? Like, shit. it's sad, you know, like how that stuff happens. But I was painting, and then I was working nights at the Chinese restaurant.
Yeah.
I loved the Chinese restaurant. It was one of my most favorite jobs. You know, people talk about, oh, what, do you want to be a fucking dishwasher or something? Listen, like, it doesn't matter what the fuck you do. Like, there's awesome people all over this planet, like, doing things. And the owners of this restaurant, now this is in Howell, so Chinese people in Howell, you know, they're not, like, necessarily common, you know. Because the thing was, like, I wasn't ever doing anything half-assed. Like, I was really trying. Like, whatever they taught me, I would do. And they liked me, you know, because I treated everybody the same. Like, I mean, I wasn't ever like, oh, this job sucks, I'm just doing it. Like, I had a kid. Like, they would give me food at the end of the night. Like, when you have a kid and you're poor, like, when you get when you get Chinese food to take home, it's, like, fucking priceless. Yeah. You know? Because here you are making piddly amounts an hour, but they give you, like, the equivalent of, like, 2 meals to take home or something. Right. That's, like, makes up for the time I'm there, you know? Yeah. It's great, you know? So we ate a lot of Chinese food.
Yeah. And didn't they, like, give you the real stuff?
Oh, yes, that's the thing. So this is what's awesome. This is probably no secret these days, but Chinese food in America isn't actually Chinese food. Right. Right? Yeah. It's American food with Chinese names, or, you know, it's not Chinese.
Chinese style.
So the cool thing was, at the Chinese restaurant, I found out what real Chinese food was. Right? Yeah. Because the family would eat real Chinese food every night. Yeah. And I remember the night they were, because, like, one of them was, like, making something. I'm like, what are you making? I'm like, you don't sell that. And he's like, no. He's like, they wouldn't like this. I'm like, that is the best thing I ever ate. And he goes, they're not all like you, Dan. He said, they won't like it. I'm like, no, seriously. I'm like, this is fucking awesome. So then I remember the night they were like, we want you to sit with us at the dinner table, which was amazing. Because, like, they didn't ask the other employees, see? So I got to sit with them every night at the family table and eat the real Chinese food as my meal. And it was fucking awesome. It was different every night. I mean, it was just, I can vividly see the food in my head even now, and the colors, and it's like, it's so burned into my brain, you know? Yeah. And then they would give me food to take home. Now, tragically, later, they both died in a car accident. Yeah, the owners. And it was really sad. I think the daughter and the son are running it now, but I haven't been there since. I heard about that, which is kind of sad. But
you should pop in sometime and just see if...
They probably wouldn't recognize me.
You never know.
But the thing is, they knew Ian, because, like, I was there a couple of years, and so, like, they saw him grow, like, you know, get bigger.
That's the other thing about people in those areas, where it's like...
They're still there in that same restaurant.
They don't leave.
They don't leave.
And they don't forget. Yeah. Like...
Well, it's Janice is the girl, who's a woman now. I mean, she's probably like 32 now, or 3 or something, you know? Yeah. Because she was just a young girl back then.
So how did you get into KizCam?
So KizCam is the screen printing place. So KizCam, what I was doing is I set up a couple appointments just to, like, I'm trying to think, okay, I want to do something with like, I have, like, art skills, and obviously I like making shirts. Like, that's something I wanted to do anyway. So KizCam was the screen print shop. There was another shop. I went to a job interview at this other place, but they weren't screen printing. There was some other place that did, like, typesetting or something. Like, yeah. And I went in for the interview, and after the interview, this was really interesting. I remember this. The guy that runs the place, he goes, I'm not going to lie. He said, you can definitely do everything you need to do here. And he said, but you're going to be bored here. That's what he told me. He said, you're going to be bored. And he was worried about that. Right. And he's like, this job is not for you. He's like, you should find a place where you can not be bored. You know, and I'm grateful he said that to me.
What's funny is I went into a job interview for this exact same position. Yeah. I was just like, like, I thought I was going in for a design job.
Yeah.
But it was typesetting.
But
it was for, like, a sign.
Mm-hmm.
And he was basically just like, you don't want to work here.
Isn't that weird?
And I was like, but I need a job. And
yeah.
I was like, no, it's not going to work. It was the same thing. Same exact
thing.
It was probably the same time.
It might have been. And I was like, I remember thinking the same thing, like, I need a job. And then I was like, but this guy, and like, he's not being, he's being just honest.
Yeah.
Like, he's telling me I will be bored. So then I go to KizCam, awesomest place of all time. Like, Dan was the best guy. Because he started his business from a trailer. You know, like, so he was a real person. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I went there and I showed him my art, you know, things I had designed, you know, so at least I had that going for me. I could be like, this, look, you know. And he's like, yeah. And then he said, later on he had told me, he said, and he hired me, which was great. At first he's like, they didn't really need, but like, I'm like, listen, I'll do anything. So like, when he hired me, I was just cleaning screens, you know. Mm-hmm. I didn't care. And then he told me later, he's like, one of the main reasons, he said, was when he saw Ian sitting in the car, you know, because he knew that I was like serious, because like, when you have a kid, like, you're not fucking around. You know what I mean? Like, you have to, like, you're not just like, oh, is this cool? Like, you know, mm-hmm. It's like, no, man, like, I have to do something till this kid's 18, you know? So then,
at least, and then if not,
I'm working at KizCam. The KizCam era was a good one. At first, I mean, it was great because I'm almost glad I knew nothing, because like, I got to learn, you know. Jesse Evans worked there.
Yeah. Awesome
guy. Taught me everything about making, like, all the work of the screen printing part. None of the design part. This is only now I'm doing the printing, I'm the screens, the emulsion, and all this. And then one day, the wife, Carol, she was doing something on a Mac computer trying to design, and she's like, I can't do this and that. And then I was like, just do this. And I like told her, like, and they're like, how do you know how to do that? Mm-hmm. I'm like, went to fucking art college and worked on, you know, Mac computers.
Right.
And they were like, oh, that's cool. So then I was doing I was doing the digital stuff. Do you know what I mean?
And that was like the official transition from ballpoint pen to mouse.
Yeah, well,
for work.
I'll tell you the moment I know exactly when I went from, well, for work, right? But I know the moment I went to a mouse, and it's my uncle Larry is an architect, and he bought the first, like, the Mac Classic with the square kind of mouse, you know?
Yeah.
And he sat me down and he goes, Dan, check this out. And Mac had this really cool tutorial for the mouse with a guy that like walks or something, and he's like, this is a mouse, because Atari computer didn't have it. You know, you had joysticks and all that.
Right.
Because we played video games, so we didn't have the mouse. And I went through and I was like, this is cool. And then my Uncle Larry taught me Photoshop. He had Photoshop and he had Illustrator, and it was version 1. And I loved it.
Remember, he also had one of the first scanners.
Yes, he had a hand scanner.
Yeah.
That was only like 4 inches wide.
And you had to manually.
You manually did it, but wasn't that cool though? That was fucking cool, man. Yeah.
That's crazy.
But then at KizCam, there was Freehand, a program called Freehand. I think it was Adobe Freehand. Some of the licenses and companies ended up like combining and stuff over the years.
Right.
But then I was doing little, you know, both things.
So you were doing.
But Kara was the main designer because she would do it forever. But I still did it. You know, I was doing a little everything, and I really liked it. And the interesting thing is, how much money you make is only relevant to your cost of living, right? Like, whether or not you feel like you're getting paid enough is directly related to what your costs are. Now, what sucked was, and this is really sucky, I had Ian, but I still had to pay child support because Willa was unemployed indefinitely. And the court was pro-woman. Mm-hmm. So even though I was already taking care of him and paying for everything, they still directly took child support out of my check. And there's nothing I could do about it. It was crazy. And she was making money as a stripper. I'm not trying to badmouth her. I don't want to but it was really frustrating, and
yeah, because I'm not.
I mean,
I've never been a stripper, but I have worked in the bars scene for many years.
Yeah.
And I know that a lot of cash is trading hands.
Yeah.
And isn't all necessarily being.
No, it's not. And I didn't drink, smoke. No money I had was being frivolously just wasted. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
And so, and then I had
you were just bills.
Then the student loan. I had a scholarship, but I had a loan for the school supplies.
Yeah.
It wasn't that much, but then that came back with interest and they automatically deducted that from my check too.
Wow.
Right? I know. Right. It's crazy. And but get this. I have to take him to daycare.
Right.
Before work every morning. I have to drive him and I have to pay for daycare. Some people I've talked to, like Jim, he's like, I don't know how you even did it. And I was like...
Can't imagine.
Yeah.
Because no matter what you were making hourly...
Right.
Probably wasn't...
This is kind of what saved me. So I lived in the house right down the street. I rented out the mayor's house with Jess. Which is kind of cool.
Right.
So me and Jess lived in the mayor's house of Old Heartland.
Yeah.
Right next to the general store. So I could walk to work. The cool thing was when Ian was old enough to go to the school, it was... Literally, when kindergarten, right by the Cromaine Library over there. Right. Right? So, once all that shit was deducted, I didn't make much money, but I made it work because I'm minimizing my, travel and all that, just trying to live just bare minimal,
Yeah.
And then the cool thing.
You drank and smoked, and
I lived right next to because
even if you wanted to, you couldn't have afforded it. But that would have done you under there.
Yeah, that would have been it. That would have been the tipping point.
Right.
Thank God I never got hurt really bad.
Right.
Well, I mean, I was hurt like normal Americans that can't afford normal things, like when your tooth is fucking killing you and you can't afford to go to shit like that. It's just sad, but so. Next door, the general store, the old guy there that ran the store, he knew the situation. And so he would be like, he goes, someone ordered a pizza and they didn't pick it up. And I'd be like, oh, yeah? He's like, yeah. He goes, do you want it? It's $1 or whatever, And I'd be like, thanks, man. So he would give me pizza. He'd give Ian stuff. I mean, what's cool is we lived right next door to the fucking party store.
Yeah, and we used to get carry out from that place. And, I remember it wasn't the best pizza, but for $1, that probably was the best fucking pizza.
Yeah. Well, here's the other cool thing.
And especially in that situation.
The house was split into two parts. The guy next to me, he was an older guy, but he was cool as hell. He actually, worked at the party store, and he had a key. So sometimes at night, it'd be midnight, and he'd be like, you want some, fucking beef, beef jerky or something? And he'd go unlock it and get some snacks, you know what I mean? So
that's funny.
The cool thing was I wasn't going to starve to death.
Yeah.
Because what you realize in life, it's who you know is the most important thing.
Well, and also realizing what you actually need.
Right. What you need.
What most people actually need is so minimal.
It is.
And when you push that and test it and just see.
That's right.
I mean, you can go for a really long time.
You can.
Multiple times, multiple days.
I mean, I got really good at fixing everything myself.
That's awesome.
Everything. Yeah. And to this day, everyone knows I fix everything. Mm-hmm. Vehicles, equipment, my refrigerator. It doesn't matter.
Right. You
learn how parts, you were out of necessity. When your car breaks and it's just sitting there, and you're I have to fix it before the sun goes down. That's it. Or I'm screwed. I can't take Ian to daycare and I can't, I have to, so you could learn how to, do that stuff, Even if you have to, put a C-clamp where a bolt snapped and just crank, and, just to get you by, and then, fix it. But, yeah, I learned to fix a lot of things. Yeah, and Kids Cam was a good place. Dan was a good guy. I learned a lot. I still talk to Jess. He has his own screen printing company.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And Bob's married to his sister.
Bob married his sister. Everybody in Heartland is related to everybody else in Heartland.
Yeah.
It's actually true.
Except
No,
me.
listen.
I'm not.
Jess. Bob married Jess's sister. Bob's
Brothers and sisters.
Listen.
Yeah.
Bob's sister.
Carrie or...
Listen. Bob's sister Tammy
Oh, right.
is married to Dougie. Dougie is my niece's uncle.
I can't...
No, it's crazy. Listen.
I don't even know what that means.
Dougie's brother was my sister's husband, which means this. Tammy and my sister at one point were both married to a set of brothers, which means their kids are all related. It's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
Like, everyone in Heartland's actually related.
And then Bob Sixbury married one of, like...
Bob Sixbury married Carrie.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's right. That's right.
And it's like we could keep going.
Yeah, you can keep going. Yeah.
That's too much right there.
Yeah. But Jess moved away.
Right.
Jess moved. He moved to, it's North Carolina, I think, or North Carolina, or South Carolina.
I don't know. I mean, Bob lives in North Carolina.
Right, because what's funny, well, this isn't funny, but like, because at Bob's dad's funeral, when I went there, Bob was there with his wife and the kids. And when I walked up, I was talking to Bob, and one of the kids was like looking at me, and she goes, he used to live with Uncle Jess. Him and Uncle Jesse used to live together. So, like, that's how she, like, explained me to...
Because she saw Fiends on YouTube.
You know. And I was like, and I'm at it, and I said, that's right. I said, we used to crap in the same toilet every day. We shared the same toilet for, like, 2 years, every day. One after the other. And then had to take a shower in there. And it was weird. The bathroom was like right in the living room, and like a weird. Because you know when they turn houses into apartments, they just put things in weird places. Yeah. But yeah, that was fun. So I wasn't making that much money compared to my bills, right? Mm-hmm. But it was still enough. Like I still made it work, and it was actually a good kind of thing because the work was so close.
Yeah.
The people were good. That thing is, the people were good. Yeah. Jess worked with me there. We lived in the same house. You know, Jess was cool as fuck. That helps because when you have a roommate, like a shitty roommate is horrible, you know. But luckily he was totally just the most chilled out, awesomest person of all time. So it was like great, you know. Yeah. I mean, he's in a Beatle film, so it's like, you know.
Was that was when you were first messing around with the heat transfers, I think?
Yep, Dan did the heat transfers then.
Where you
he did.
Cutting them by hand.
Okay, so at Kiss Cam, we screen printed, but the cool thing was, he had a manual screen print press, but most of the screen printing was on the transfer paper. Mm-hmm. So we would do multicolors on the transfer paper with screen print ink and then heat press them on the shirts. But then he also had the Canon laser printer. That was you could also transfer into the shirts. That was what was cool because you could make like any Beatle shirt out of any ripped off anything.
Any colors.
Yeah, right. Now it only worked on like light, but I had that white backing I would do sometimes. For some, but that wasn't good for mass production. But on the white shirts, on the light shirts, it was great. Yeah, it was fun. Yeah.
And at the same time was I'm downtown working.
Right.
Coincidentally, realized John Harris is also hanging out in that area.
Which is kind of crazy.
Which is a strange coincidence.
Right.
And then we got the opportunity to start organizing and putting parties, which then needed flyers for.
Right.
So we came through contact you, the guy. Right. That knows how to.
And I wasn't even that good at it or anything. We did. It was fun. No one.
Yes.
No, right.
So And also like with shirts. I mean, you were making shirts.
Yeah.
But and had to have it a while. And I know my frustration was with clothing in general. Like you go to any place, any store to buy something, and you're just like, this one shirt costs $50.
Yeah.
And I remember contacting you, I think, on the phone, and I was like, well, we all need shirts. So, like, what if I take $50 and you take $50 and we have $100, how many shirts can we make?
Mm-hmm.
Like, we can put whatever we want on it.
Right.
And then it won't be the stupid shit that we don't want.
Right.
And we can each have something cool. And maybe have some extras that other people we know want,
Yeah.
Which, that was my approach to it. And it also went back to that whole, like with your comic, your original comic, or like you make something interesting, and the second you do, someone else just sees it and they...
Right. Jaspers.
Is that the definition of a Jasper? I don't know.
No, in the Tom Goes the Mayor, the place that steals his Rats Off shirt, I think is called, Jesters. Is it Jesters?
It might be Jaspers.
Jaspers.
Yeah.
Jesters or Jaspers or something.
Yeah.
Oh.
So our first rave flyers, you helped design.
Is that the one with the St. Bernard jumping through the...
That is even later.
Was it?
That was for Velvet.
Oh, okay.
The one with Jonathan Harris was Sketchpad.
Oh, Sketchpad. Yeah.
I was at the Black.
Okay, so the interesting thing about that flyer...
Those were done at your Uncle Larry.
Yeah, so the girl on that flyer is Alita, which is what they're making that live action movie of just right now.
Right, yeah.
And still...
Battle Angel.
Yeah, and still, nobody knows what it is still yet until, like, right now.
Right.
Nobody knows what the fuck that's even about.
That was, like, almost...
It's not like it's some known thing. It's not.
Right.
Only comic book people, like, know what that is.
Mm-hmm.
And now, what's his face? James Cameron is his name?
Mm-hmm.
He's making the movie because he's he just personally likes that.
Right.
And everyone's like, what are you making? They're like, what is this who? Like, what comic book is this from 1992? Right. Like, nobody knows what this is.
Right.
And he's like, I don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
Like, I want to make this. This is nothing. This has nothing to do but me and my own boner. Like, doesn't matter if nobody else knows what this is.
Yeah.
And I don't know if the movie's, you see the trailer, the main character is CG, but the other people aren't.
It's
weird.
I saw the preview for it.
The main character is not even real. She's 100% CG.
I saw the trailer for it when I saw Star Wars.
Yeah, they probably showed it there.
But that was Christmas. So, I mean...
Oh, really?
They've at least had a trailer out for a while. I haven't seen anything since.
Yeah, they have had a trailer. I'll probably want to see it, but it's one of those things where you want to see things, but you don't want to see things you like ruined also, So you're like, eh. The one thing that I did notice, and this is...
It looks better than Avatar.
I hate Avatar. Just so you know, like, I don't know if...
What about Avatar's font? No, just kidding.
Dude, I love that. It's one of my favorite things of all, the papyrus font.
Yeah.
Listen, I love that skit. It's one of my favorite all-time things. Really that is so funny.
It's so nerdy.
That Battle Angel trailer, and this is something I know because I have the comic. In the trailer, when they show her, when she gets her prostitute arms... Because he got them from a dead prostitute. Mm-hmm. They have a pattern etched into them because they're fancy, kind of. And when I saw it in the trailer, I'm like, that's actually the exact pattern that's drawn on in the comic. So I went back to look because I have the comic still in the basement. And I paused it, and it's exactly the same. And I'm like, that's a James Cameron thing. Like, he fucking... has the fucking comics still. And he's making the shit, like, exactly like it. Like, not, like, kind of like it.
Yeah.
Like, he fucking made it real. But not real, like CG real. But it wasn't like he did his take on it. It's like he made it, you know, which is kind of neat. Like that, there's like 8 people that would know that.
Yeah.
That he took somebody's hand-drawn line art on the side of an arm, and then in the movie trailer, it's actually etched into the arm.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, he didn't have to do it that exact, but he did. That doesn't mean the movie's going to be good.
Well,
but it's just interesting.
it's only one way to find out.
Well, if you watch the trailer, you know, like, her eyes are huge, right? Did you see it?
Yeah, I thought it looked good.
Well,
I was excited.
Well, okay. I don't think it looks bad, but what's weird is she's the only character in an actual cast of real humans that's not a human.
Right.
Which I don't understand that decision. Like, because CG is good, but you can still tell. It's like Uncanny Valley. Like, you can tell when something's not actually real.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
So, okay, I mean, it's kind of like watching Roger Rabbit. You have an animated character interacting with real people, okay? The only difference is you're not supposed to really know it's animated. So I don't know if it succeeds. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't get it. Like, I don't get why
It almost never succeeds.
It doesn't succeed.
Right.
Like, it's tough. It's a tough sell. Because the entire time these actors are acting, she's not even there.
Yeah.
It's tough.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know why he went there. Because, okay. I mean, I can say I don't know why. James Cameron, he made Avatar. Like, that's his thing. He puts people in with weird-looking computer people, you know?
Well, they do that in every movie for every reason.
Right, but, okay, do you know any other movies he made that are fucking awesome? He made The Terminator.
What about the underwater, like the Abyss or something? Like what?
No, I don't know if he made that.
There was like some kind of underwater.
They had computer, though.
Yeah.
The Terminator had no computer. The one from the 80s.
Yeah.
The original Terminator movie is, like, fucking awesome.
Right.
Like, I love it.
Yeah.
Every time it's on, I can't not watch it. I mean, yeah, it's Arnold Schwarzenegger, but at the time, Arnold Schwarzenegger wasn't, like, Arnold Schwarzenegger. You know what I mean? He was not known until after that blew him up. So,
right.
Like, he's a good fit for the part because it's not about his dialogue in the movie. Yeah. Like, he's just supposed to be scary, and he is scary in the movie.
Yeah.
But that whole thing about, like, time travel and the future scenes where they're fighting and everything's made. There's no, like, there's drones. I mean, there's drones in the sky, you know, shooting people. Like, that's not even sci-fi anymore. Like, drones kill people now.
Right.
And they don't need human control. They just happen to have it still.
Right.
Right? I mean, you could hack a drone and give it AI and say, kill this. And it would. It would just indiscriminately kill.
Right.
It's like actually terrifying to think about. Mm-hmm. Because there's nobody in them already. And they kill people every day. But somebody has to say yes or no. Okay? But really, you could say, okay, with your own computer eyes, anything that looks like this, shoot. And you could tell all the drones to take off at once and do the same thing. And, like, within an hour, there could be, like, 10,000 dead people. Like, seriously. Mm-hmm. Like, that's creepy. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And it's not. That's not even. That's, like, one OS update away. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, really. That's the messed up thing about AI is, like, I mean, yeah, we're talking to the iPad and, like, kind of goofing around. It's, like, it's creepy. But it's one update away from being, like, something completely out of control, right? Mm-hmm. Like, all of a sudden, it's, like, way different, you know? You think it's the same, but it's not. And if these things happen, like, when you don't even know they're happening. Like, you're sleeping, and your thing's fucking updating. And what's it doing, you know? I mean, it can obviously hear you, because you talk to it. You push that button to talk to it, but that's because that's programmed to do that. You know what I mean?
Well, and there's a lot of...
people can just talk to it without pushing the button, if you wanted to.
And there's also a lot of speculation over what is actually listening to you.
Yeah.
Whether you're pressing a button or not. Whether Siri or any other AI is... Like, the amount of things that... It'll be interesting to maybe we can do this, but an interesting experiment to see what YouTube recommends I watch or anyone here watches after this entire conversation.
Right.
Because it will probably recommend a bunch of shit based on things that were discussed.
That's what Jim said at work. He said he saw a guy do that, and he said, watch this. He goes, I'm going to talk about something for a few minutes, like that I don't normally talk about. And he did. Mm-hmm. And he said, now watch. And he went, and it was popping up, like, in the ads and stuff, like, requested things, like dogs or something. Like, he was like, he just made it obvious. And he goes, I didn't have anything on. Like, I didn't touch anything. Right. I'm just talking.
His phone was just in sleep mode, or not even sleep mode. Just...
Right. Because some people can't some people just say Siri and then it hears them and then they talk?
Probably.
Right, it's like hands-free. Because you're not supposed to be touching the button.
Right.
So, it's already listen for a certain word.
All the time.
All the time.
Yeah, so what is it doing with...
all the other millions of words it gets until it hears...
that are not Siri. Or serious.
Yeah. So, like, I don't want to waste... in it, but I mean, I could set mine to see, like, I don't even know what the settings are for. Like, maybe you can do that now.
Probably. I don't know. It might depend on the device or the model of the device. Or...
Now, I don't update my OS. In fact, I did one, I didn't like it, so I rolled it back, which isn't easy on an iPad, but you can do it. It's not easy for, like, the layman. Like, they don't want you to ever go back.
Right. All my iPads are version 2, and so that's not...
Oh, iPad 2, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so the OS is 9.3.5 or something. Like, it won't go to the new one, you know?
Dude, that's awesome because there's a really good app that only works on those.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, that I really liked and I can't use it anymore. It was that thing that destroyed the photos and made them all cool.
Oh, like the pixel art type shit?
Mm-hmm.
I always wondered.
Yeah, it's called Decimate, but they stopped supporting, it only works on a few OSs.
Oh. It only works on a few drones.
Yeah. Where's your asparagus? It's gonna be full of maggots.
Yum.
Are you really gonna leave it out there? You should probably bring it in. I can too, but I don't want the maggots on my feet. Are there maggots in it?
Nope. And it looks cooked.
Yay!
It smells. Alright, so I only have a couple more things.
Oh, okay.
If you want to get to it.
Well, we'll see. Alright, go ahead.
So...
I don't have to give long answers, but I can, but we'll see.
That's whatever you want to do.
Sure. If I say anything mean about people, you gotta edit it out.
Okay, that's fine.
I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings.
That's fine. So you're at Ascot, or no, you're at KizCam.
Yeah.
And at what point does the transition to Ascot happen?
So there's another company in between.
Oh, okay.
It was designshirts.com.
Okay.
So it was a whole thing.
I don't know if I...
That's a whole...
Experience.
That's a whole story.
I don't think I experienced that.
It's an interesting thing. So, while I was working at KizCam, there were two guys that were making shirts. Well, they were continuously ordering shirts for Michigan State. They were like frat dudes, you know? Mm. And the one guy, he was... I'm not going to say any names. I don't need to, because, But the one guy... Frank, that was actually his real name. But Frank, he had money, parents had money, And so they were making shirts and they were selling them like frat shirts and stuff. Mm-hmm. And he had a friend and like who ended up his business partner, Ken. He's a really cool guy. And these two guys, they were doing really well selling shirts to like Michigan State kids, university. And so they decided, well, we want to make our own like business, you know? And so when they graduated, they rented out a part of Kids Cam where they were running like their business going. Mm-hmm. And what happened was, and I wasn't in on the conversations about this, Kids Cam didn't just do t-shirts, they did offset printing, which is almost a dead thing now. Mm-hmm. Like business cards that are actually offset print. Like in the movie American Psycho.
Raised lettering.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Like all that is like gone. Like everything's just like digitally printed. In fact, when Jay got his made, I'm like, make sure you get offset. And he showed me his business cards, and I'm like, these aren't offset. This is just a laser. Mm-hmm. He goes, yeah, they called it digital offset. I'm like, there's no such thing. I'm like, they just like jerked you around, dude. Mm-hmm. Like, because nobody, like, they told you they could do it, and then they just made up a term, and then, right. And the thing is, you don't know because you've never seen a real one. Like, you don't know what an actual printed business card looks like.
Right.
Like, sorry, it's sad, but, you know.
Yeah. And what is that?
Watch American Psycho.
Is that like a stamping process? Or
so, it's like a...
How is it different than
I got K here, my nose.
Silk screen or screen print?
It's not much. I mean, it's the same basic... You're not doing it by hand, but instead of making a screen, you make a plate. You expose it. Yeah. And then you wrap... The plate's like metal, and you wrap it around a drum, and it spins, and the paper goes underneath it with the spinning, and there's ink you put in it. And so if it's multicolor, you do one color, then you do the other one and send that through into the second color. Yeah. And they look real nice because it's printed. Like it's offset printed, you know?
I think I know a guy.
They're really nice.
Who just started a business recently doing that.
These presses are huge, though. Like, because, you know, they're big mechanical.
I mean, it's kind of like a lost art.
Yes.
And it's the guy that did the design for the Chris Lowell album
yeah.
cover.
Yeah. We also had a Kluge, which is like a Ben Franklin era one with a big metal wheel. And that was the kind that did the stamping, where you actually put the letters in. Oh, yeah. And it went bam! And it would just bam! That should have been in a museum because it was cool, but it was dangerous. Because if you got stuck in it, it would just chew you up and spit you out and never even stop. You know? Yeah, safety is one of those things that came along with the future. But anyway, so the two guys that rented out the thing, they got to talking with Dan, and they were like, okay, look, we will take... They offered to buy the screen printing part of the business from Dan. All the screen printing part. And then Dan was going to focus on... Because Dan had gotten into embroidery also. So I used to embroider. Yeah. I was an embroiderer. And I was trained, and I ran the Tajima machines, and I could do embroidery. So that's a lot to do. So you have offset, you have embroidery, and you have screen printing, but we were just a small business, not many people there. And so Dan wanted to focus more on the embroidery part and still do the business cards too. And so he said, okay, I'll sell the screen printing part, but you have to take me, with it. Like, I'm not firing him. Yeah. Like, and also, they couldn't do it anyway without me. Right. Like, I knew everything. Like, they didn't know how to do anything. Yep. So, they take over the screen printing part, and then they open a shop in Whitmore Lake. So then I go there, okay? I just basically go over. It was a bummer, but it was like, well, okay, whatever. And then the thing was, Frank was a lawyer, or like and he was like shady, you know.
A shady lawyer?
Yeah.
That's weird.
Yeah, I mean, and so basically, everything he did was like trying to figure out how to pay people less and get more work out of them. Right. And it was really weird because, like, he would always try to get me to write down everything I knew. And I'm like, dude, I could write a book. Like, what is that going to do, you know? And he's like, no, you got to write down everything. And I'm like, man, I want to make shirts and stuff, you know? Like, this is weird. And so then they tried to get me to do something like that wasn't screen printing, like do other things, and I don't know. So eventually it didn't work out, and I was like, this isn't working out, like I'm not really happy here.
Was the business did you have customers?
Yeah, we had customers. Well, here's the thing. So Frank, this is really weird. Frank fired me, okay? And so the thing was, he fired me, but I was doing all the screen printing. And I was also doing the digital stuff because their business was designshirts.com, which if you think about it, that's a pretty big URL to have at the time. And I was doing all the web stuff. Not all of it, but I was doing like a lot of it. And after he fired me, I went and got a job, and this is interesting. It wasn't even a week later. Like, I just went into the phone book, and I started with A. And what's really funny is there's two that start with A. One's Adrian's, and it's funny because I know Adrian now, because we ended up doing his printing. And thank God he wasn't there when I called, because I did not want a job. I didn't want a job working for Adrian. He's hilarious. That's where I got the tape deck from at work. But anyway, so then I called Ascot, and Marcia answered, and I was like, are you guys hiring? And she was like, no. And I was like, oh, okay. I'm like, I have 10 years of experience. And she was like, oh, well, she's like, well, come in, And then I went in, and she was like, oh, okay. And, and she's like, what do you know how to do? And I said, I can do this, this, and this, and this, and this. And she's like, okay. And then what's funny is I talked to her, like, not too long ago, and she was like, you know what's funny? And I go, what? And she said, remember John, who, like, worked here, like, was the main guy here before you got here? I was like, yeah. She goes, John did not like you. She's like, in fact, I think he hated you. I'm like, really? And the funny thing is, he got in a car accident and had brain damage, and he can't remember who I was, which is kind of funny. But anyway, not that it's funny he got in the accident, but he doesn't remember me, which is kind of funny. Like,
he doesn't remember that he hates you.
Yes. But he doesn't work there anymore, but he stopped in a couple times. It's kind of funny. So she said, when you came in and I asked what you could do, and you said this, 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 and this, she goes, after you left, he said, there's no way he can do all that. Like, and he was really upset, and she goes, and I thought, like, John knew what he was talking about, and I thought maybe you were full of shit. Yeah. I was like, no. Like, that was my resume. Like, I was just, like, saying I did this and this and this. So, anyway, she hired me. I started out by just designing shirts for the art fair, Ann Arbor Art Fair, and I did some cool ones. And then she's like, we're not really hiring right now, but she's like, you can do, I mean, like, for this kind of work, but she's like, you can design, help design stuff. I'm like, yeah, sure. And then I did, and then she's like, fuck it. She's like, yeah, just fucking work here, like, whatever.
Yeah.
And that was it. I mean, that was basically it. I mean, it wasn't like, maybe I was lucky, but I mean, every job has its ups and downs.
Were you living in Ann Arbor at this point?
No, so then when I got that job in Ann Arbor, this was really great because I didn't like what was going on in Heartland with Ian and schools and stuff, and I said, I made a conscious decision after the thing with designshirts.com, and that was in Whitmore Lake. I mean, and we actually had...
So you're already driving almost all the way out there.
Yeah, so we already had customers come in and openly use the N-word and not being, like, these aren't, like, they were not gangster rappers. You know what I mean? And I remember, like, one time a customer pissed me off so bad, and I went out there, and then, like, Ken was like, no, don't upset the customers. And I was like, who wants these fucking customers? Like, they're fucking pieces of shit, Like, I don't want to make shirts for these people. What, I know you shouldn't be political, but, like, what joy is it making shirts for, like, racist Nazis?
Right.
Like, there's no, am I supposed to feel good about that?
Right, yeah.
Like, I don't want, I mean, obviously I don't know what every one of my customers does.
Right.
But I know this. In Ann Arbor, I've never had a customer come in and do that.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So anyway, I was like, I want to live in Ann Arbor. It's my favorite place to be. Mm-hmm. Like, and when I think about all the places I've been, like, what place do I actually enjoy, like in my life? And I thought about where we used to skate, the comic shops, like, all the times we spent in Ann Arbor, the stores, just the people, and I was like, that's where I want to go. Like, that's where I want to live. And I said, and I want Ian, and I'm like, once I go, I want Ian to go to school, and I want him to stay at that same school. I don't want him, like, his mom and just jumping around, and, like, it's horrible for kids. Like, I just want him to go to a good school, and that's what I did. That was my plan. See, I was planning then.
Sure.
Yeah. And then Ian went to Ann Arbor Open, became friends with Jay, Colin, and Adam. And they're just little.
They were little kids playing Guitar Hero too much.
Yeah. And
they got so good at Guitar Hero that we were all like, you guys should figure out how to play real instruments. And then they actually did. You
know, the reason they went to Guitar Hero was because Ian was playing, and he was pretty young at this time, he was playing Call of Duty.
I remember that.
And that became, like, that game was like a drug for kids. It was almost as bad as, like, heroin. Like, seriously. Sounds like I'm joking, but...
Like the online part?
Yeah. So, Ian was so into the Xbox at the time, he didn't realize it. He was, like, cracked out. And I was like, dude, I love video games. Like, obviously. But, like, you just sit here at, like, Call of Duty, like, and just non-stop, and you don't even blink, and then your eyes are bloodshot. I'm like, and I said, look, man, I said, at school, like, your school's not doing good now, like, your grades are bad and stuff, and I'm not, like, a hard ass, but I'm like, there's an obvious, like thing going on here.
Yeah.
And it was really tough because
they're probably actually teaching you cool shit.
Yeah, right, because he went to Ann Arbor Open, where Hanako goes now. Like, it's a badass school. It's awesome.
Right.
And so he was really against me. Like, he was violently against it. He was like, no, you know, because he wasn't a little kid, but he wasn't like he wasn't an adult either yet. You know, so it's that weird in between where, like, it's creepy because, like, they still have kind of a, like, brain of a little kid, but they're old enough to, like, act like they think they know better, but they don't.
Yeah.
So it's like, he just wanted to play all the time. And I said, okay. I said, I'm going to convert this problem to math. You can play for this amount of time, right? Like, so I said, if your grades are this is how long you can play. And if your grades are this is how long you can play. And it was like it was directly related.
Yeah.
Right? I'm like, if it has no effect on this, that's fine. Then I don't care. Right. Like, in fact, if you're getting all A's and you're playing 12 hours a day, that must be why. So go for it. You know, like, seriously, I'm being serious. I'm like, whatever's doing it is working or not working.
Yeah.
So obviously, like, his grades were going down, so then I kept turning the timer down. And then, like, but the thing was, like, he'd play for, like, 2 hours, and then I had a timer on it, and it would say, your time's up, because you can do that on Xbox. And he would be like, no way, that was 2 hours, you know, and he'd be like, I'm like, dude, that was 2 fucking hours. Like, he had no concept of time at all.
Yeah, right.
And one time, man, it was so bad, I just went downstairs, I would just turn the breaker off to all the power in the house. I'd be like, dude, the power went out, we gotta go outside and do something. And that way, see, he didn't think it was me. And he was like, oh, man, okay. And that was cool, because then I could actually go outside and, like, make him, like, live life.
Yeah.
Well, I was like, look. And then I got him Guitar Hero, because I'm like, okay, if I can get him to, like, do something that is, like, moving around and, like, instrumental. And then they did the Guitar Hero. And they were young, you know. And that was cool, because the Guitar Hero replaced the Call of Duty, see?
Yeah.
And that was musical, and really, honestly, it's a great thing, honestly.
Yeah.
It's like, it was music, they were playing instruments, not really for real, but, I mean, at least got them in the motions,
right?
You know? And once they realized they could do that, I was like, look, dude, I go, Ian, you can already play the drums on Guitar Hero. Think about that. Like, you can play the drums. That's the same as playing electronic fucking drums. Yeah. Which is the same as playing real drums.
Right.
Because electronic drums were made from real drums.
Right.
You know? He's like, yeah? I'm like, yeah, try it. Like, you guys should go downstairs in the basement and try making some music with some instruments. And they did. And they made music. And then it got really good.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, good job. And then they stopped playing. That's it. It replaced the Xbox. It was great, you know?
Yeah.
In fact, there was times that he wouldn't even, like, play it at all. Like, it was all about making real, actual stuff.
Right.
Because once you start creating things, that's where it's at. I mean, that's where your brain's like, yeah, this is it, you know? Mm. Like, I'm actually making it. Like, it's awesome.
And that album is really good. I mean...
Which one? The Worms Are Mad one?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it.
You listen to it...
I think it's great.
And it's exactly... It's like that... It is like that Japanese... Or the song you were playing...
Yeah.
In the car earlier where... It reminds you of the music. Someone needs to release a skateboard video,
right,
on VHS,
just so that
needs to be the soundtrack.
Yeah,
like Beto should do a skateboard,
right?
You know,
yeah,
because that's exactly what it reminds me of. Like the punk rock we used to listen. We didn't know who those bands were. We didn't care who those bands were. And it wasn't necessarily technically the most perfect or polished, but it's just good music.
Yeah, I mean, the perfect, the polished, that's not important at all.
Right.
Like, sometimes that you can overdo that and it takes something away from it, actually. I feel like, you know, when it's overdone.
Yeah.
Like, it can, you know. Yeah, in fact, they said they purposely. I was like, "Why did you make an MP3?" And they're like, "Cause that sounds better when it's crappy." Yeah. I was like, "That's crazy," you know? Yeah. They're like, "No, trust us, listen to it." I'm like, "All right." I'm like, and then it does. It kind of has that like older.
Like I downloaded it off LimeWire.
Yeah, right. It's like, how would you
free.
Get that off Napster or LimeWire? Yeah, that sounds good. Oh, did I answer the question?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know, but I can't remember what the question.
So I just had a couple more, and you don't want to go further. We don't have to.
Okay, what's the other one?
We can shotgun it, and you just tell me if you have anything to say.
Okay.
Let me see. Alright. 2 things, and you tell me whatever you want. Or nothing at all, but, the Kim Harrison thing. Mm-hmm. How it came about, or anything worth mentioning. And just because of current events, the Anthony Bourdain story.
The Anthony Bourdain story?
Yeah, I don't know that there's necessarily a story, but...
Oh, you mean just because I make, like, his t-shirt he wears?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's not, like, I don't know him.
Okay, I don't know.
Yeah. No, I make a lot of shirts. Mm-hmm. And when he was in town, he bought one of them. And it's one that I like.
Where did he, like...
He got it at Monahan's. So, this is kind of cool. So, Monahan's is an old customer of ours, and actually everything we do with them is just on trade. We don't even deal with money, really. So we trade basically seafood for shirts.
I don't even know what Monahan's is.
Monahan's is a fish market in Ann Arbor.
Okay.
It's a fish market.
Yeah.
And the thing is, they're really good, because, I mean, it's just good stuff. It's really good.
I wouldn't know, because I don't...
Because you don't like it, right. No, I mean, you wouldn't know. Yeah. So, I make a squid shirt for them, like a squid t-shirt, and then Anthony bought one of these shirts, and he was wearing it, you know, on one of his shows or something. I saw it, and I was like, that's cool. I was like, I made that. You know?
Yeah.
It's neat when you see your shirts, like, on TV or, like, in other countries. I saw one in the Sports Illustrated I made. It was a famous soccer player was wearing it.
Cool.
And the crazy part about it is the soccer player was not that old. And what had happened was, we used to, like, sell or give away if we had extras or overruns of some shirts. We would donate them to certain people, and this one church that picked up a bunch of shirts that we donated went to, like, Central America, like, on a mission, and they handed out the shirts to kids that were, like, poor.
Yeah.
One of the kids was playing soccer, and he ended up becoming, like, a World Cup champion.
Huh.
And in his photo, he was still wearing that T-shirt that he got.
His favorite shirt.
It was, like, his favorite shirt.
That's cool.
And the funny thing is, the shirt is Pittsfield T-ball. Like, that's my county, like, I live with.
All right.
He was wearing a Pittsfield T-ball shirt that I made.
Which has nothing to do.
And the photo, I mean, this is how crazy, like, it's weird because human beings think that nothing they do has any effect on anything as one person, right? Mm-hmm. You think you always think, like, the circumstances of life or what's going on are outside of your direct influence, really, like, as one human being, right? But if you think about, like, let's say you're just one person, but if you could look back into the past and you could go back in time and just change one little thing, how much impact would that have on the timeline, right? Mm-hmm. It could have you would have an tremendous effect, right? Mm-hmm. You have the same effect right now every time you do something. But people don't, like, see it that way. You know what I mean? But in their mind, they're like, well, if I went back in time, I could do this, and then it would change everything, right? Mm-hmm. But that's happening every day, every second. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So, like, you know, you don't really, like, I see,
You're
like...
always going back in time.
Yes. Exactly. You know? So it's like, I see Anthony Bourdain, like, you know, with the shirt I made, and it's like, it's weird. Like, you're not that separated from what's going on in the entire world. You're not.
Right. Like,
the shirt I made ended up in Central America on a kid who became a famous athlete, and he's still wearing the shirt. Yeah. Right?
Right.
Like,
he could afford to wear any shirt.
He could afford to wear anything.
And he could
afford to wear anything.
Right.
You know, chainmail, gold
chainmail. And he's wearing this.
He could wear seal skin, you know, or whatever. Pick your endangered species. You could probably just wear a lion. Yeah. He's wearing this shirt, you know, this T-shirt, and it's just like that. How far this went. Yeah. So, you know, I mean the things you do have a lasting effect on everything, and like it will leach out. Like, it will somehow. You don't know how far it will go, right. But every time you do anything, you make something.
Right.
Anytime you make something, like,
it goes on a journey.
Yeah, like you. Anytime you put yourself out there in any form, it goes somewhere. You know. I mean, yeah, maybe sometimes it just hits a wall, but then again, maybe sometimes it just keeps going and keeps going. You know.
Right.
So, don't short sell yourself, like, ever. And don't think that what you're doing isn't having an effect, you know, because you wouldn't know until the end anyway. You would have no idea.
Yeah.
Like, you could be the reason something turned out a certain way, and you might not even know that you were the one reason. You might not even know.
The inspiration.
Yeah.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, for example, the kid in Central America. Like, what if he became, like, a drug lord and ended up assassinating, like, 1 million people? But on that day, instead of being so, like, sad, like, someone said, here's a T-shirt from another country. And he was like, whoa, you gave me that for free? Like, and then maybe, like, I'm just exaggerating, but, like, you don't know. Mm. Like, that could have been a turning point, you know?
Right.
The substitute teacher that came in the one day and said one thing to me, and that changed the whole course of my life. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, who knows?
Yeah.
I may have never left Heartland.
Right.
I doubt it, but you don't know. I mean, I'd like...
It's
listen,
statistically,
right.
You would be married to Bob's sister.
Listen, if I would have stayed, I would have been married to somebody's sister.
And still be there.
Yeah. Right. So, you know, I'd like to think the way, like, from where I am now, like, that wouldn't have happened, but it could have happened, you know.
Or, as we've discussed before, every possible combination of every possible option is happening.
Yes.
In another
that's fucking
universe.
Right.
Or dimension.
Every time there's a choice. Yes. There's a version of me in Heartland right now. There's good people in Heartland. I've met them. I mean, there are. I'm not, like, I don't want this to sound like I'm bashing.
Well, it's also a lot different now than it was when we were there.
Well, Steve McDonald lives there. Permanently.
Yeah.
Isn't he the mayor?
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, you know, it's not just a truck stop and one fast food restaurant and a grocery store.
And again, like I'm going to say, even back then, like going back in time, I still met like when I worked at Kiz Cam and stuff, like there are good people, there are smart people, you know, everywhere on the planet. Like you just have to find them, you know. The problem is there's certain mindsets that when you're around like minds, you kind of get assimilated like the Borg. And then you don't realize it because you don't get any alternative points of view or anything. So that's kind of, you know, I feel like I'm preaching, but it's like, you only know what you know. So unless you move to a different viewpoint, you can't see it any different, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, moving from Pontiac or Union Lake to Heartland was culture shock for me. It was actually culture shock.
Absolutely.
I remember I actually broke down and cried. Like, after I looked around it, I didn't understand what was going on. I saw horses and stuff, and there was nobody I knew, and I was young. I was like 10.
Yeah.
And the life I had known was gone. I mean, houses were right next to each other. I had friends and enemies, like, on every street. Mm-hmm. You know, it was that street life. Everything was real close, you know, and all of a sudden there was nothing near me, you know? Yeah. And I was like, what is this? You know? Right. And so then I had to learn that life. But the thing is, I picked up some negative things from Heartland. Just from being around people, just some of the things people would say and, like, behave. Like, it wasn't on purpose when I was younger, but, I mean, that's the way humans are. Like, you could pick it up. So, like, then when I went from Heartland to college, that was another big culture switch.
You're like, whoa, wait a minute, civilization?
Yeah. And then
culture exists?
And then from there, that was a good thing. I mean, now there's no excuse, but, you know, like when I go to Japan, then, like, then I'm looking at the entire U.S., like, from outside, like, that's another whole thing that changes your whole, like, idea about what's going on. When you leave completely, you leave the entire fucking area. Mm. Like, you go exactly as far away on the earth as you can. And you live there for a while. And then it's like it leaves your system. Like, it just fucking leaves. Like, after a while, it's gone. And then you can look at it without any of the influence. Right. And then you get another whole perspective on it. And then when you come back, you feel like shit. You don't feel like, thank God I'm home. Right. You feel like, my God, what is this fucked up police state we live in where everyone's depressed, unhealthy, and the police and government are literally just like fucking staring you down like they want to beat your ass. Like, what is this shit? Yeah. You know, it's unfortunate, you know, but it's one of those things you don't see until you go somewhere else. Now, I guess you could leave and go to somewhere worse. Sure. Right? Yeah. You could go to, like, fucking North Korea or, like, Mexico and end up like a prisoner in a drug thing, you know. And then you could come back and go, oh, thank God I'm here. So there's a perspective there. You know what I mean? Some places are better, but there's other places better than America. I mean, I know that doesn't sound like I'm not bad. No, wait, the Nazis like America. I can't figure this out anymore. So, like, the Nazis are actually well established and doing just fine in America. That's right. Okay. Yeah, so it's weird, you know.
They came here.
When you leave.
Refuge.
Yeah. When you leave America long enough.
As well as apparently other places around the world.
Yeah. Like,
set up shop there too.
I would say I'm not supposed to end this with a moral of a story or anything, but I would just say, like, if you can not waste your money on, like, frivolous things, like, save it up and just leave. Like, just leave if you can for as long as you can financially. Like just to see, like, what it's like to get it out of your system. Like, get America out of your system so that you can look at it with a fresh perspective and see what it looks like and feels like. Because it's not the same. It's not the same when you leave and then you have to reintroduce it. It doesn't feel as good. You realize that there's a lot of fucked up things going on. I mean, you already know there is, but it hurts worse. Like, because you know there's other ways, like better ways.
Right.
Yeah. You know that people can do better. Like in every way.
You want to know what's funny is it sounds because you never really had a alcohol or drug abuse problem.
Right. Not at all.
It sounds
not even a little bit.
But it sounds to me like your journey to Japan and back is having an awakening and seeing coming back and seeing this reality. Through a new lens is very similar when someone doesn't go anywhere but have maybe sort of hallucinate LSD experience.
Okay.
I just
don't know
if that makes sense to you.
I don't know if I can take it
right. That's what it's like. The way you're saying things sounds very similar.
Yeah. Well, I mean, everything you
I would recommend anyone to take a vacation.
Well, are you saying
get the fuck out?
Are you saying do you recommend LSD or do you recommend they get the fuck out?
Do it however you can.
Yeah.
All right. How about that, man? On that broken rig,
man, it hurts.
Cool.
Yeah, you can add it anytime you want.
Unless you want to keep talking.
I mean, I can, but
4 in the morning.
Yeah, I better stop.
I can.
No one wants to listen to it.
They will, though.
I don't know everything I'm saying very well. Like, I don't want to.
Well, we can always do more. I'm gonna keep doing it regularly. So.
Yeah. Right. I was gonna say, don't try to cram too much because, like, the problem is when you ask me something, sometimes I can say a lot more on each thing.
Oh,
but
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but it's like I'm trying to like get through it to the next question. But obviously there's a ton of.
Well, we don't have a problem talking ever.
No.
About anything.
Right.
We could talk about
badminton rackets.
We could do
you could pick anything you want.
We could do a whole podcast on turning girls on, talking about technology.
I'm going to tell you what, honestly, because not only can I talk about it from real life, I can just keep making shit up. Right. It's like making a comic, I could just say something, then you say something from that, and it would just, people would be like, is that real?
Right. And wait, but let me look at it this way,
yeah.
And I see something completely different.
Right.
So first, I'd like to thank everyone for listening to this first edition of long-form conversations that I plan on having with a variety of creative personalities that I've had the privilege of becoming friends with over the years. Thank you, Dan, for taking the time to hang out with me. I'm sure we will do it again soon. If you'd like to find out more about Dan McDonald, the best way would be to visit deviantart.com/5bodyblade, all one word. That's the number 5 body blade. And if you're interested in learning more about what's going on in my world, feel free to visit erichinchman.com. I have a newsletter there you can join, and I promise not to spam you. In fact, I rarely send out newsletters at all, and I only do in the rare situation that I come across something I actually feel is really worth sharing. Events, releases, mixes, etc. And if you like what I'm doing and the direction this is headed, or even if you don't, feel free to, as they say, like, comment, subscribe, share, depending on the service you're listening to this on, whether it's iTunes, Google Play, or some other form of podcast service. Give us a little review so other people know what you think about the episodes, the shows, what we're doing. And by doing so, you'll help us out. You'll help me out. Each little interaction is a form of a vote. Another thing that you can do that I'm not quite sure how it works yet, but there is a option for those of you familiar with an app called Anchor, which is available for iOS and Android phones and tablets, mobile devices. And somehow, by using that app and searching for this show, Eric's show, apparently you're able to call in and reach me with a question or a comment or a suggestion. So give it a try. Let's see how it works. It'll be fun to interact. And on that note, let's put this episode to rest. And I'll leave you. Thanks again for listening. We will lead out with a song by Dan McDonald. And it's a gross song. In fact, it's called Gross Heart. Enjoy.
Ouch.